Why the fuck are we here? Katsuki Bakugo growled as he and the other members of Class 1A sat in UA's auditorium, watching a pink-haired, support course student tinker with a large machine. Kakakin. Izuku Midoriya gasped meekly as he played with Koda and Eri, keeping the children entertained as the adults talked among each other on the across the room that there are kids here. Come on, Baku bro, it's not so bad. No one else is complaining. Eijiro Kirishima chuckled while clasping his hand onto the ash blonde's shoulder, ignoring the feral growl emanating from the angered teen. That's because the teachers already know why we're here. The girls are busy swooning over shitty Deku, and the rest of you extras don't even have anything better to do. The explosion quirk user scoffed with an eye roll. Damn you, Midoriya. Minoru Mineta sobbed as he watched his female classmates gush over how adorable Midoriya, crouching down to play with the children and their toys, was, all with slight blushes gracing their cheeks. Even Kyoka Jiru, despite her staying quiet and watching from the corner of her eye. Come on, man. I mean, it is pretty cute. Denki Kaminari sighed, rubbing his neck with his eyes closed. Kaminari, how could you? Mineta screeched, turning to glare at the blonde with tears streaming down his cheeks. What? I'm just calling it how I see it. The electrification quirk user defended, turning his own glare to the shorter boy. Will you idiots shut the hell up? Bakugo roared, small explosions lighting the air above his palms. Now, calm down, Bakugo. Principal Nizu said as he approached the group of students. The reason you were brought here will be explained shortly. Finished. Mei Hatsum exclaimed as she stepped away from the machine, grease and oil decorating her face, and rushed towards the principal. Right now, in fact, the animal principal cheered as the girl arrived. Care to do the honors of explaining, Hatsum? Principal Nizu, sir, were we really only brought here to see what this ruffian has been up to? Tinya Ida questioned, robotically chopping his arm as he readjusted his glasses. Ruffian? Is that the right word? Shoto Todoroki asked in a monotone, tilting his head slightly to the side with a blank look on his. Dude, that's what you're worrying about? Hantashiro chuckled, folding his arms over his chest. Shut up already, Katsuki shouted once again, the veins in his head visibly throbbing. What did you make, Hatsum? Izuku asked as he stood up while lifting Eri and Koda onto his shoulders, causing the girls to gush over the cuteness once more. I'm glad you asked, Midoriya. Hatsum giggled before gesturing towards her creation. Two large, cylindrical chambers connected by a mass of computers, tubes, and wires. This is my new, revolutionary creation, the travel tubes. Right now they only work by taking what's in the chamber on the left and moves it to the right. But if everything goes right, I should be able to cut the rooms out altogether, allowing heroes to teleport to the scene of a crime at will. That's amazing, Hatsum. Midoriya exclaimed as he set the children on the ground and approached the pink-haired girl with a wide smile, earning annoyed looks from the females of the class. Think about all the good that could come from this. You could. Shut it, you damn nerd. We don't have all day for you to go on a tangent. Bakugo barked, sending a harsh glare at the green-haired boy, whom sent a sheepish smile back. What the hell does this have to do with us? Well, Mei began, a maniacal smile spreading across her face after testing with inanimate objects and lab rats. I'm finally ready for human trials. I don't like where this is going. Mashireo Ojiro said nervously, scratching his cheek as the members of the class lost their smiles. Who human trials? Are you sure that's a good idea? Izuku squeaked as he took a step back, earning looks of worry from the majority of the class. Principal Nizu didn't like me using animals, so after helping me with some of the calculations, we've decided it's ready for people. Mei happily replied, oblivious to the sudden fear coursing through her fellow students. But what happens if it explodes? Ochiko Uraraka asked, taking a cautious step forward. Don't know, it hasn't exploded yet. The pink-haired inventor laughed cheerfully. The yet doesn't make me feel better, the green-eyed boy mumbled before feeling a slight tug on his pants leg. Are you going to help her, Deku? Eri asked as she looked up at the young hero with wide eyes as he turned to face her. Well, Izuku stuttered as the young girl gave him puppy dog eyes. I guess. Bro, that's so manly, Kirishima exclaimed as he bared his jagged teeth. Deku, are you sure this is safe? Ochiko cried in worry, the majority of her peers backing her up. Like, seriously dude, you know her track record. Kaminari exclaimed, running his hands through his hair. Yeah, but Midoriya began as he reached down and ruffled the children's hair with a fond smile. A hero's job is to help people. This is a bad idea. Shota Aizawa, the erasure hero, erased her head calmly said. The tired teacher stood between Namuri Kiyama, the 18-plus only hero, Midnight, and the hero group the Wild Pussycats. Calm down, Shota. Higuri is down there helping her, and Nizu already gave his permission. Hisashi Yamada, the hero present, Mike shouted from the other side of the cat-themed heroes, turning from his conversation with Snipe and Cementos, and gestured towards Power Loader, helping the pink-haired girl close Izuku into her machine. Don't mind him. Dadvawa gets a little protective when his kids are in danger. Kiyama teased, inciting a series of giggles. I am not. Aizawa began only to stop when Nizu popped out his scarf. Now, let's settle down. They are almost finished down there, so it's time for us to take our seats. The principal stated as he hopped off the teacher's shoulder and began making his way over to where Mirio Togata and Toshinori Yagi, the former symbol of peace, All Might, were playing, whom was completely ignored by the students as the sent weary looks at the large machine. How did you get in there? Shota asked as he looked from his scarf to his boss. When did you get in there? All right, everyone, take your seats. It's time to begin, Nizu proclaimed, smiling at his students. Let us know if you start feeling any pain, okay? Mei said cheerfully as the door closed on Izuku, cutting off any reply. Near instantly the machine came to life, screens lighting up and gases pumped through pipes as the room looked on with fascination. The metal tubing began to glow orange, seemingly igniting with power while the chambers filled with blue light. Then, the machine began to shake. Sparks began to fly as a pipe came loose at the gas shot into the air. Is that supposed to happen? Mina Ashido asked as her and her classmates once again looked worried. Define supposed to happen. Hatsum chuckled as she quickly began typing on computers, eyes flickering from one screen to the next. Hatsum, Power Loader scolded before cracks formed in the chambers, gas pumping into the air before the room was filled with blinding light. Is everyone all right? Aizawa coughed as he pushed himself up, a thick cloud of dust blocking his view of his students. Yeah? Uraraka mumbled as the dust began to clear, and she began to look around, but where is Deku? I think the better question is where are we? Kaminari said as he stood up. The group found themselves in a massive dome of a room, the walls lined with screens that were flickering from static, a battlefield, a fancy restaurant, and back to a battle. That's a surprisingly good question for you, Jairu stated with a small smirk as she moved to her feet. Hey, Denki shouted back, aggrieved. Hatsum, do you know where we are? Momo Yaoyorozu asked in an effort to change the subject as she straightened her uniform. Nope, Mei declared as she sprung onto her feet, only to be quickly mesmerized by the countless screens surrounding them. Somewhere you shouldn't be, a voice said from behind the group, the voice seemingly layered, male and female, young and old, as if multiple people were speaking in complete unison. Who are you? Mineta squeaked as he skittered behind Mina, only to be quickly kicked away, while the group stared at the towering being, standing nearly twice as tall as their tallest members while being made of completely smooth, glowing, white light that gave no defining features. I am a watcher. It is my job to observe the near countless realities and categorize the major events throughout time and space. The entity announced as it lifted one of its large, glowing arm to gesture to the room. This is a space between realms, which allows access to viewing all of reality. How did we get here? Nizu asked in a serious yet still cheerful tone, raising his paw to silence the others as they began to speak up. You were playing with forces beyond your comprehension. When they played back, you were sent here. The watcher replied, its smooth, blank face, missing even eyes, stared calmly at the animal. I see, the principal said as he rubbed his maw, vaguely noting Mei's smile and head dropped slightly. You said you observe all reality here? How is that possible? Yaoyorozu spoke up, trying to get a grasp on the situation. I do not watch all of reality. I am merely assigned to observe the major events of different versions of specimen 06B7889 or izuku Midoriya, as you know him as. The being of light stated I can accomplish this by the flow of time being dilated by 31,557,600,000 compared to the average realm, and the room allowing me to view points that have already happened or have yet to happen. Can you repeat that, bro? Kirishima asked with a sheepish grin. Accentually, by the time 1,000 years pass in here, only 1 second will pass outside of here, and he uses this time to observe important points in time regarding to different versions of Midoriya. Nizu explained happily. Correct. Watcher confirmed. You seem to be handling this well, sir. Midnight said, though her tone clearly showing she was confused. But, of course, we live in a world where many wonders powers exist. It always helps to keep an open mind. The principal exclaimed. Is our Deku okay? Uraraka asked, earning nods of agreement. Who the fuck cares? Bakuga growled, earning a smack from Tsuajui's tongue. That has yet to be determined. Not enough time has passed from the point of your depart to now for anything to be made of his condition. The being answered. So, only the people outside of the machine were teleported? Ectoplasm summarized. Guess so. Present Mike shrugged. Well, I guess your invention worked. Handsome. Power Loader admitted, in an effort to raise his student's morale. Can you bring us back to our world? Aizawa asked, his voice silencing all the muttering from everyone else. I will need to discuss this with the other watchers. Something like this has yet to happen, the entity said before stepping away from the group. How long will that take? The black-haired teacher sighed, clearly already exhausted. I do not know, Watcher replied. Oh, can we watch those other universe thingies you were talking about while you're gone? Ashido asked excitedly, bouncing up and down with the floating clothes of Toru Hagakure. Do as you wish, you can only observe from here, so interacting is impossible. The being said before disappearing, no sound or lights, merely vanishing as if they were never there to begin with. Wait, how do we watch them? Hatsum shouted at the air, having perked up at the thought of this unique experience, before a screen materialized in front of the group, static already on display. Oh, never mind. Chapter 2. How do we turn this thing on? Mina said as she looked around the screen, the flat piece of light floating completely in the air with no signs of cables or controls. Why does it matter? It's just shitty Deku. Bakugo growled as he turned his head away, making sure to keep the screen in view out of the corner of his eye. Oh, come on, Baku bro. It's not like there's anything else to do. Kirishima grinned as he wrapped his arm around the ashy blonde besides. How often do you get to see alternate versions of your friends? Maybe there'll even be a version you'll like. As if I'd like anything about Deku. Katsuki growled before turning a glare to the pink-haired girl. This is all your fault. Pink hair. Maybe it's voice-controlled? Mei said, ignoring the temperamental boy as Ashido ran back to the group. Hey, play universe thing. Toru yelled, her invisible hands cupping around her mouth. Hagakure, I don't think that's how it works. Yairazu sighed, only for the static to disappear and be replaced by white lettering on a black screen. Realm display function engaged. Prepare universe DC 11515 CT IM VS IM. Visual loading. Audio loading. Appeared on the screen, drawing everyone's attention. See, Yamamo, sometimes yelling does solve your problems. The invisible girl giggled as she pats the taller girl on the back, the class's vice president dropping her head in defeat when the message displayed. They've been spending too much time with you. Aizawa sighed, sending a quick glance at the chuckling present mic. It's starting. Mina exclaimed as the screen began to display images. Welcome to Earth Prime. A deep, yet familiar voice said from behind a man dressed in a dark, bat-themed outfit, prompting him to turn around and look at a similar man dressed in an owl-themed uniform. Before there was thought, there was this place. One Earth, with one history, but with the coming of man, came the illusion of free will. With that illusion came chaos. With every choice we make, we literally make a world. History branches in two, creating one Earth, where we made the choice, and a second where we didn't. That's the secret of the universe, you know? The Owlman continued, Pressing the screen connected to a large device, billions of people, making billions of choices, creating infinite Earths. Every choice, every cell evolving in a unique way, making a new world. The screen closed in on Batman's eyes before zooming in on a strange device on the owlman's hip, while he continued, some so similar you could spend a lifetime searching for any distinction, and some so radically different that defy comprehension. And all the branches originate here, Batman said as he began to circle his opponent, gesturing to the barren wasteland around them, a yellow, shifting portal open not far off. Every version of reality balances vicariously on this singular Earth, the silver-suited man confirmed, typing on the screen once more. So that's the original Earth? Yaoyorozu asked. What happened to it? Jiru wondered, watching the screen in awe. But which one is Deku? Uraraka asked, wondering why both covered their faces. I think they both are, Todoroki assumed. Gaining a few weird looks. We're already dealing with multiple version, and their voices sound very similar. How did they even get there? Ida questioned. The world showed no signs of life. Probably through that weird gate thing, Zero said while pointing to the screen. They probably used that weird device. Kaminari grinned. How they got there isn't important, Aizawa announced, earning looks of curiosity. What is important is why they are there, and what that machine does. It seems so different from the Earth we know. Owlman calmly said, I can't imagine what series of decisions lead to this Earth hurtling out of its orbit. But I know this. The source of the cataclysm was the same as it always is, the Silver Man said as he finished typing and faced the dark-suited man. You can't be sure of that, Batman argued, glaring up at his opposite. Anything. You know better. Owlman interjected. Man is a cancer, and I've chosen to cut out the disease. You're talking about killing, the Dark Knight began, only to be cut off again. Everyone who ever lived, ever will live, the Silver Man stated, pressing the screen once more, causing the screen to display an abort message. I guess we know who the bad guy is. Kaminari chuckled sheepishly. A few glares shot into his direction from horrified students. Killing everyone. Mina shuddered in fear. Why would anyone want to do that? Some people just want to watch the world burn. Midnight sighed, already seeing the effect on her students. But Deku would never. Uraraka tried to explain, tears swimming in her eyes. That isn't Deku, round face. But Kuga growled, ending the girl's argument. Now we know why they are there, Shota said calmly, red eyes glaring at the Silver Man. If that really is the original Earth, then that machine must be some kind of bomb, and when it goes off, all Earths will most likely be destroyed. Nizu finished in a solemn tone, lowering his head in a silent prayer. I chose to make the only possible, real choice. Owlman smiled as the machine activated. The noise of electronics powering up rang through the air as lights blinked to life. You're insane, Batman stated, crouching down into a combat position. Does it really matter? There are alternate versions of me you'd find quite charming, the silver-dressed man said as he walked down the stairs. The darker-dressed of the two threw a set of black orbs at his opponent. The balls bursting into a thick cloud of smoke covered the area. Batman rushed through the smoke and attempted to punch the other man, only for Owlman to grab his fist and shoulder and throw him overhead. Landing higher on the stairs, Batman charged back down, attempting an attack once again, only to be dodged and blocked before he was grabbed by the throat and thrown away. Landing with a small flip, Batman immediately tried to throw 3 bat-shaped shuriken at Owlman, only for the Silver Man to swat them away with a flick of his cloak. Owlman went on the offensive, landing a brutal series of blows on his opponent, each strike forcing Batman back, before finishing his combo by stepping onto the Dark Knight's chest and flip-kicking him into the air, sending the bat-themed man into a large stone pillar. That's not good, Kaminari groaned as he watched the one-sided combat. You think? Mineta screeched, realizing his life was on the line if the bomb were to go off. Come on, Deku, stop being a pussy. Get up and kick his bird-themed ass. Katsuki roared, his blood pumping as he watched the fight. From what I gather, we're very much alike, Owlman said calmly as he approached his opponent, whom was struggling to get back up. Everything about you tells the tale. Your attitude, your costume, and your tactics. They all scream of outrage, despair, vengeance. What terrible wrong was done to you to set you on this path? The silver-clad man asked before reaching down and grabbing Batman's throat, lifting him into the air and slamming him into the pillar. It doesn't really matter. Nothing matters. What are you going to do? Batman choked as he struggled to breathe. Talk me to death? Actually, the villain smiled before letting go of his victim's throat and proceeding to punch him across the face before uppercutting him away. I thought I'd beat you to death. Owlman leapt into the air, aiming to land where Batman was as the Dark Knight jumped out of the way, leaping up the pillar as his opponent crashed into where he had fallen and sending chunks of rock shooting outwards. Landing behind the bird-themed man, the bat-themed hero wasted no time in wrapping his arm around Owlman's throat and bringing a small spray can up to his mouth. Owlman smiled as a shield of glass came down, blocking the gas before he grabbed his enemy's hand and elbowed him in the stomach, tossing him over his shoulder and into the ground and throwing him away. Batman jumped back to his feet as Owlman aimed his wrist at him, firing 4 gray discs that the hero flipped away from as they exploded on impact. The force of the blast sent the Dark Knight into the air, where he fired of a grappling hook at the silver-clad man, only for Owlman to drop his own smoke bomb and cause it to miss. Back onto the offensive, the villain ran out of the smoke and delivered a powerful blow to Batman's stomach, following up with more heavy hits before punching the hero clean through a rock. I don't get it. Why isn't Batteria using his quirk? Mina asked, clenching her fist as she watched an adult version of her friend get beaten down. This is an alternate version. He may not have that quirk, and judging by how many gadgets he's been using, he may not have any powers at all. Momo answered, biting her lip as the bat-themed man was clearly outmatched. Is no one going to comment on Batteria? Zero asked, only to be ignored. You should have sent your flying man. With his strength he might have had a chance, but you don't trust anyone else to do what needs to be done. Owlman said harshly as he picked Batman up once again and removed the same device from earlier off of his hip and tossed it aside, ignoring the near-desperate reach for it from his opponent. I feel the same way. If we're really alike, you know this is wrong. You must have been a good man once. Batman pleaded, attempting to talk sense into his opponent. No, not good, never good. Owlman replied as he lifted his fist. After all, I'm only human. Owlman delivered 2 heavy hits into Batman before the Dark Knight placed his hand over his face, pulling it back to reveal a bat-shaped device stuck to the silver helmet. The small machine beeped quickly before exploding, knocking Batman away before he quickly began to run for the bomb. Hell yeah, take that, you jackass. Bakuga cheered, sparks shooting from his hands. Bakugu, watch your language, there are still children present. Ida chastised as he chopped his arm in the Bond's direction. Come on, bro, now really not the time. Kirishima laughed. He was happy like his friends, but still nervous about the bomb. Owlman emerged from the smoke as Batman began tapping the screen, scrolling through even more versions of Earth before the silver-suited man placed him into a headlock, growling no more debate. I am going to kill you now. Then everyone else. Batman looked up at the bomb as another light turned on and groaned, there is a difference between you and me. Stepping off of the device, the hero flipped out of the hold and over the villain before kicking him into the bomb and throwing a bola, tying him to the machine. We both looked into the abyss, but when it looked back at us, you blinked. Batman pulled out the handheld device from earlier, shocking Owlman as he looked down at his own hip to find it gone and pressed a single button on it. The end of the device split into 3 parts as purple lightning danced between the segments, and the Dark Knight tossed it back to the silver villain. The bomb churned with power as it and Owlman began to glow with a purple hue before, just as the silver-dressed man broke his restraints and lunged forward, they disappeared. Hell yeah, the class cheered, jumping in celebration, sans Bakugu. He did it. Toru cheered as she hugged Mina, the cheeks squishing together. Indeed, without the bomb being on that Earth, I doubt it will have its intended effect. Nizu confirmed as he hopped onto a Razorhead's shoulder. His goal never was to defeat his opponent in combat, but to get that teleporter from him and move the bomb. Aizawa said in a bored, yet impressed, tone. But he had his own. Why didn't he use that? Ryu asked, lifting a finger to poke her mouth. Maybe his didn't work, and that's why there's that yellow portal, Rikido Sato said, rubbing his own chin. The bomb reappeared on a barren, ice planet as Owlman finished his lunch. The machine noisily powered up behind the villain as he glanced around before the final light lit up on the machine. Abort, blinking on the screen, drawing the silver-clad man's attention. It doesn't matter, Owlman stated as the bomb glowed a bright light. The machine detonated in a monstrous explosion that quickly consumed the ice planet before the screen switched back to static. Silence reigned through the room as everyone stared at the static screen in shock, the celebration cut short by the final images displayed on the monitor. Why didn't he? Yaoyorozu gasped with wide, confused eyes. It's best not to wonder, Shota stated, closing his eyes as he contemplated the events. For a time, no one said anything, everyone trying to grasp the idea of an izuku that cared so little for life, even his own. Let's watch another. Mina, Denki, and Ijiro exclaimed in unison, eager to see other possibilities. Chapter 3. Thanks, Yamamo. Toru cheered as she hugged the raven-haired girl, as the vice president finished making a set of folding chairs, one for each person. It's no problem, the taller girls reassured as she sat down, slightly winded. Your control over your quirk has gotten better, Aizawa stated as he sat calmly in his own seat. Good job. You made Dadvoa proud. Mina laughed, leaning back in her chair while grinning widely. Stop calling me that, Shota growled, activating his quirk to glare at his pink-skinned student. Now, Nizu said with a smile, standing on his chair. Let's just move forward, no sense in wasting time arguing. Nizu's right. Midnight giggled as she covered her mouth, so let's just get this show going. Right, May loudly proclaimed, rocking in her seat. Play universe. Realm display function engaged. Prepare universe MCU 15458DS. IM. VS. D. Visual loading. Audio loading. Replace the static as the group looked at the screen. I wonder what those letters and numbers mean. Ectoplasm asked with a slight head tilt. Probably just some kind of organization method or something. Snipe answered, leaning back as well. Shoo, it's starting. Hisashi ironically silenced the two while bouncing in excitement. Izuku gazed around, marveling as the sky danced with a mysterious energy as planets seemed to float around above. The green-haired man steeled his goatee face as he looked down at his wrist, drawing attention to his outfit. Blue robes with 3 gray belts and a crimson cloak, all held together by a golden amulet. The man waved his hand gently over his wrist, watching a trail of mystic, green energy formed around it with the motion. Where in the fuck is he? Bakuga shouted with a raised eyebrow. It looks like space on drugs. Shiro laughed only to stop, abruptly, as Ida and Aizawa glared at him. Maybe it's some cool overdimension or something. Uraraka gushed, staring with sparkling eyes at the cosmic scene. But what is that light? Yaoyorozu mumbled with a calculating look. His quirk? Maybe, or maybe not. Niza giggled. This is an entirely different world. It could be a quirk, or it could be something completely different. Well, it does not sparkle like moi. Yuga Aoyama praised, striking an overly eccentric pose. The world behind Izuku suddenly ignited into light as the man turned around. Midoriya looked up at the light, his amulet glowing green, as the energy moved back, revealing the light to be a single eye of an enormous humanoid being. The colossal entity towered over the comet that Izuku stood on and scowled down at the man, magical flames engulfing its head. What mad banquet of darkness is this? Fumikage Tokoyami gasped as he watched the creature reveal itself. I think that's Tokoyami, for holy fuck. Mina translated, no one commenting as they looked on with a mixture of horror and worry. And I thought Mount Lady was big. Mineta screeched, trembling in his seat. Is Deku going to fight that? Eri squeaked as she leaned into Mirio, whom protectively put his hand around her. Izuku leapt from one asteroid to another, approaching the massive being with a quick glance at the green ring around his wrist, before shouting, Dormammu, I've come to bargain. You've come to die? Your world is now my world. Like all worlds. Dormammu roared in a tone of ancient power, leaning forward. Izuku quickly formed two orange discs as large, purple spikes rained from above, forcing the green-eyed man to dodge and block the barrage. Dormammu opened his mouth and fired an enormous, purple beam at the man. Midoriya barely had time to bring a disc to block it, the force of the attack forcing him down to his knees. Gah! Izuku screamed as he struggled against the energy as sparks raining past his shoulder, only to be overwhelmed and for the purple power to vaporize him as it plowed through everything in its path. Midoriya. The majority of the class yelled out in horror, but Kugu and Todoroki staring slack-jawed at the screen. Deku. Uraraka gasped as her eyes swelled with tears, matching the rest of her classmates. What kind of power does that thing have? Kaminari stuttered in fright. That's so not manly, Kirishima mumbled as he stared horrified. Some opponents just can't be reasoned with. Mirio sighed as he hugged a now sobbing Eri. Purple particles filled the air around the crevice left from the attack before everything seemed to freeze in place. Then, the world itself seemed to move in reverse. The attack reappeared, followed by Izuku. The prior events replayed in reverse order, all the way to the moment Izuku waved his hand over his wrist and created the green ring. Wait, what? Toru croaked as everyone stared at the screen in confusion. Was that supposed to happen? The normally silent Mizo Shoji spoke up as the group tried to figure out what just happened. Izuku leapt from one asteroid to another, approaching the massive being with a quick glance at the green ring around his wrist, before shouting Dormammu. I've come to bargain. Who the fuck hit replay on this shit? Bakugu roared as he jumped from his seat. What kind of sadistic bastard even installs a rewind feature like this? Midoriya, just run. We already know how this ends. Yaoyorozu pleaded with the screen, tears fresh in her eyes. You've come to die? Your world is now mine. Dormammu began to growl, cutting himself off with a look of confusion before glaring at the green-haired man. What is this? Illusion? No, this is real. Izuku replied with no hesitation. Good. The massive entity announced before two spikes shot out of the darkness and pierced Midoriya through the chest, his final breath quickly leaving him. Oh God, Mina shouted, her pink face going pale. This is messed up. Jiru breathed as several students looked ready to vomit, herself included. Why? Why are we even watching this? Shino Sasaki, the pro hero, Mandalay asked as she felt sick, rubbing Kota's back as he buried his face into her side. Should we try turning it off? Hisashi questioned, a pained frown scarring his face. No, Aizawa replied sharply, watching the screen with barely hidden rage. Something is happening. I agree, Nizu replied solemnly, his usual cheery tones gone. Not everything is how they appear. The screen rotated until Izuku's corpse disappeared from view before Izuku leapt from one asteroid to another. The green-haired man approached the massive being with a quick glance at the green ring around his wrist, before shouting Dormammu. I've come to bargain. Okay, what the fuck is happening? Bakugu yelled as they watched the scene begin again. Deku, please just leave, Uraraka begged, unable to stand the sight of her friend dying. You, Dormammu growled before looking around in confusion. What is happening? That's what we want to know, Toru shouted, earning nods of agreement from everyone present. Just as you gave Caecilius powers from your dimension, I've brought a little power from mine. Izuku answered while motioning to the world around them before gesturing to the green ring floating around his wrist. This is time. Endless, looped time. You dare. Dormammu roared as he raised his arm above his head and brought it down on the human. Oh, F. Izuku began to sigh before being crushed. So they are in a different dimension. Uraraka choked out, struggling to understand what was happening. And that ring is time from Earth. Nizu confirmed with a nod. Midoriya was able to, somehow, create a loop where every time he dies it restarts him at a set point. Like a save point? Zero asked in confusion, like from a video game. Accentually, the principal nodded, his smile returning with grim undertones. But, wait, if that were the case, then, Yaoyorozu began, her watery, onyx eyes widening with realization. He'd remember every time this happened. Nizu continued with sadness. He remembers and feels every time he dies. Dormammu, I've come to bargain, Izuku announced as he checked the ring around his wrist. You cannot do this forever, Dormammu proclaimed, glaring at the human. Actually, I can, Midoriya countered, gesturing around. This is how things are now. You and me, trapped in this moment endlessly. Why would he do this? Todoroki finally spoke, shaken from watching his friend be killed twice. He had to have known this would happen. Ojiro sighed, his voice trembling as the adults dropped their heads. Sometimes, heroes have to make sacrifices, Toshinori mumbled, rubbing the injury on his side that had ended his career. Then you will spend an eternity dying, Dormammu growled, lowering his face to the mortal. Yes, Izuku said with his head down before looking at the giant, but everyone on Earth will live. Deku, there has to be another way, Uraraka cried, hoping to help this version of her friend. Yeah, man, you've never given up before. Why start now? Kirishima roared, baring his sharp teeth at the screen. But you will suffer, Dormammu stated, pulling away slightly. Izuku looked into the distance before looking at the monster once more, with tears in his eyes and croaking pains. An old friend. Why did he sound so sad? Mina whispered, her heart breaking at the sound and confession. We don't know what these versions have been through. Yaoyorozu sighed, making a silent vow to protect their Izuku from such agony. They said something about that in the last world. What terrible wrong was done to you to set you on this path? Ida quoted as he dropped his head in shame. We were all too concerned about the bomb to even realize what that meant. Dormammu unleashed another beam without hesitation, disintegrating Izuku instantly. Dormammu, Midoriya shouted before the screen showed him being impaled once again. I've come to bargain, Izuku finished as he walked forward again. Stop, please, just stop. Toru gasped as she turned away from the screen, her fellow students doing the same. Mirio, can't you help him? Eri asked as tear ran down her cheeks and onto the ex-student's shirt. Eri, Togata began, trying to find the right words before sighing. I'm sorry. In this, Dormammu growled, flinging another asteroid at the man as he walked forward. Dormammu, Izuku said as he marched forward again. Dormammu, and again. Dormammu, and again. The screen showed the ground beneath Midoriya's feet morph into spike and pierce through him. Then, the screen flashed to green tentacles springing from nearby cracks and ripped Izuku apart. Then, the display showed red chains quickly wrapping around the man's neck, snapping it. Finally, the screen showed Izuku blocking miniature, purple beams with the same orange discs before one broke through, vaporizing him. Midoriya gasped as he collapsed in his reset location. How many times did this happen? Jiru shuddered, hands clasped over her mouth as her face turned deathly pale. Shota, don't you think this is going a bit too far? Present Mike asked in a hushed tone as he looked at the man seriously. The black-haired teacher said nothing as he stared at the large being with pure rage. He knew there was a chance they'd end up seeing much worse, but there was nothing they could do. You will never win, Dormammu stated as he watched Izuku gasp and struggle to get up. No, but I can lose again and again and again and again forever. Midoriya gasped as he pushed himself to his feet, his voice gaining power with each movement, and that makes you my prisoner. What the hell is the point of a prisoner if you're the one getting tortured, dumbass? Katsuki roared as sparks flew from his palms. He's already said why. Nizu answered calmly. Earning a mass of confused looks, he said he's come to bargain. No. Dormammu growled as he sent a wave of spikes piercing through Izuku. Stop. Make this stop. The large entity demanded as Midoriya leapt back onto the asteroid floating before him. Set me free. No. The human declared as he calmly walked up to the Colossus. I've come to bargain. You were right, Aizawa said as he relaxed in his seat, scarf covering his mouth. But what is he bargaining for? Sato said as he scratched the side of his head, a deep frown on his face from watching his classmates suffer. What do you want? Dormammu growled as he threw his head dangerously close to the human. Take your zealots from the earth, end your assault on my world, and never come back. Izuku declared as he made a sign with his hands. Do it, and I'll break the loop. He did it. Even after dying so many times, he never gave up. He won. Mineta gasped, awed by Izuku's willingness to self-sacrifice, even across worlds. Huh, hell of a kid you got there, Tiger said in shock, not bothering to hide the fact he was impressed. His recklessness seems to expand space and time. Aizawa grumbled, hiding his smile behind his scarf. Fantastic. Deku's the best, Eri whispered with a small smile as she dried her tears on Mirio's sleeve. The world was frozen. The screen showed people frozen mid-step to food held in the air. The first sign of motion came as a man in dark combat robes pushed himself onto his feet, while turning to another man struggling to get up and shouting, "Get up, Midoriya! Get up and fight! We will finish this!" The other man looked at him in confusion, Izuku missing from the picture, as he sprung to his feet and faced a man, flanked by two dark-robed subordinates, with black markings around their eyes, and the man wearing yellow robes. Why is he telling Midori to get up when he's not even there? Mina asked with a head tilt, her eyes still slightly damp. They were messing with time, Shoji said as his tentacle morphed into a mouth. Isn't it beautiful? A world beyond time, beyond death, the dark-eyed man stated dramatically as he walked forward, only for Izuku to float down behind him, prompting the man to turn and face him. What have you done? I made a bargain, Izuku said, seriously as the screen remained on the man, just before he looked down at his hand. What is this? The yellow-robed man demanded as the display revealed his hand beginning to turn to ash. Well, it's everything you ever wanted. Eternal life as part of the One. Izuku answered before shaking his head with a chuckle. You're not going to like it. Part of the One? What does that mean? Kaminari groaned as he scratched the side of his head, frowning at the screen. Well, Midoriya did say that Dormammu had to remove his zealots. Nizu sighed, shaking his head. I believe. We've just discovered who those zealots are. Gah! Caecilius and his minions screamed as their bodies rapidly turned to dust and flew into the sky, entering the cosmic world where Izuku died so many times. You know, he really should have stolen the whole book, because the warnings. Izuku sighed as he watched the villains disappear, come after the spells. Spells? So those powers were magic? Momo gasped, realizing just what this version's powers were. Dude, he's a wizard. That's so manly. Kirishima roared in excitement. Are we just going to ignore Izuku just sent those guys to the place where he died a bunch? Ojiro asked, dropping his head in realization. They were zealots of that being, meaning they were probably responsible for it coming there and the reason he had to sacrifice himself. Aizawa assured his class as many began to deflate at the news they brought this upon themselves. The heavier-set man began to chuckle before it quickly evolved into full-blown laughter as Midoriya gave him a questioning look, before the laughing man sighed, "Oh, that's funny." Izuku shrugged at that before he raised his arm to the sky, a green magic circle appearing before his hand. Twisting his arm to the side with great effort, the space around them began flowing in reverse. Rubble flew back into place as the crack in the sky shrunk before disappearing. Time seemed to begin again as people began to move as the screen turned to static. So that's it then? Sato asked as he leaned into his seat, smiling as he watched the static, happy his classmates' gamble paid off. Guess so, Tsuyu said as she frowned at the screen, worried that her friend was forced to sacrifice himself repeatedly. What a mad banquet of darkness. Tokoyami sighed as he closed his eyes, shaking his head. So, who's ready for the next one? Kirishima grinned, eager to see more. Chapter 4. The hell is wrong with all of you? Bakugu roared, agitated by the stale, dreary air. You may not care about Deku, but some of us do. Uraraka growled, glaring at the blonde boy as the rest of her classmates slowly broke out of their stupor after watching their friend die multiple times. Enough, both of you, Aizawa firmly stated as he activated his quirk to glare at his students, cutting off Bakugu's reply. Let's start the next one. Ida sighed as he laid a comforting hand on the brown-haired girl's shoulder. Good idea. Hisashi cheered with his usual smile before turning to the screenplay universe. Realm display function engaged. Preparing Universe D2 FLSG 1332. I am VS S. Visual loading. Audio loading. Oh, I wanted to do that. Kaminari sighed as he missed his chance. You can get the next one. Aizawa sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose as the screen began showing images. Looks like we're all done and dusted here, kiddos. Izuku chuckled as he walked through a round doorway and towards a railing. The green-haired man appeared younger than his previous two counterparts, but was still older than the original. This Midoriya wore padded blue armor under a tattered and damaged brownish, gray cape, a metal horn pushing the hood of the cape up as it was attached to a helmet that covered the majority of his green hair. Izuku brushed his hands together as he leaned over the railing, watching lights flip on to illuminate hundreds of levels of cells below. Ramen's on me. Why is he wearing that? Toru laughed with her fellow students as they say the horn on Midoriya's head. Perhaps it is some sort of war symbol? Yaoyorozu suggested as she struggled to keep herself composed like how ancient tribes wore feathered crowns. I take it this one is a lot more lighthearted? Yawara Chatora, the hero tiger, L said in a gruff tone. Forget what he's wearing and focus on where he is. Aizawa sighed, his eyes not leaving the screen. Ah, but I have a new horn buddy. Mina giggled as she pictured their Izuku wearing plastic horns. It looks like some kind of prison. But what's with the destruction and embers? Mirio thought aloud as he rubbed his chin, smiling slightly as Eri giggled with the class. Was it attacked? Uraraka asked as she sobered up from her laughter, noticing the details her upperclassmen pointed out. Looking pretty good down here, a woman with blue skin, red hair, and an eye patch said as her floor lit up, dozens of floors beneath Izuku. Just gotta check one last thing. The red-haired woman quickly walked over to a door that was sealed shut and moved to a three-pronged device on the side of the door. Turning the triangular device 90 degrees to the right, red light glowed behind the prongs and the door began to open, spewing out mist as she drew her pistol and stood in front of it. The woman's singular blue eye seemed to glow through the mist as she walked forward, quickly taking out a flashlight as she approached open containment pods, checking inside each of them. No, 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 no. The woman growled in a panicked tone as she reached the final and largest pod and found it empty. Izuku, he's gone. This isn't a prison riot. It's a prison break. So it is a prison, Aizawa said, narrowing his eyes as narrowed. Yes, but more importantly, that appears to be some form of high containment unit, and if they really escaped. Nizu stared cheerfully, only to devolve into a sober, serious tone. Then something really bad is loose. Midnight finished with a sigh as she closed her eyes in exasperation. The airlock on Deck 0. It's the only way out this far down. Izuku heard the woman's voice through their communicators as he jumped away from the edge in surprise, slowly turning to the mess of flames and wires that held up the platform he was standing on there going to escape. Not if I get there first, Midoriya said to himself as he climbed up the chamber, getting closer to the cables. Once the caped man was standing next to the burning wires, he drew a black and white revolver, with the spade symbol painted on, and closed one eye as he took aim. Wait, he's not going to? Momo began, her eyes widening in realization. You're kidding, right? Pixie Bob screamed in disbelief as she put the pieces together as well you couldn't even see the bottom when it was lit up. Are all of them this reckless? Aizawa sighed, knowing what was coming next. The blue-skinned woman ran out into the center chamber, only to be met with the sound of distant gunfire. Izuku? The woman ran to the edge, looking up as the platform Izuku had been standing on lost its support and began to fall into the depths below. As if in slow motion as the platform passed the one-eyed woman, she saw Izuku, holding a single wire as he rode to debris down, waving his revolver at her as he passed. The flaming husk dropping quickly into the depths where it landed with a fiery explosion that illuminated the darkness. Izuku, the woman yelled as she pushed off of the railing and ran away. Holy shit, Zero exclaimed, only to be smacked in the head by Tsu, whom nodded towards the children. Is he actually insane? Tiger asked in shock, as a large drop of sweat formed on his forehead. I think we need to wrap our Midoriya in bubble wrap or something. Toru nervously chuckled as she thought of the green-haired boy in a cocoon for his own protection. That is manly as hell, Kirishima shouted as his eyes filled with stars in his eyes. A strange red and white device spun above a piece of concrete, emitting a strange, pale blue energy. With a final pulse, the device shrunk into a drone-like form as the blue energy sunk through the rubble below. With a grunt, Izuku shoved the slab of concrete off of him as the blue energy flowed into his body, closing the last remnants of injuries on the green-haired man's body, leaving him completely healed. Never felt better? Izuku groaned as he rubbed his head and rolled his neck, not bothering to look at the burning remains of the landscape as he held out his hand and allowed the drone to hover over it before the machine turned into the mysterious energy and sunk into him. Where did that thing come from? Kaminari shouted in confusion. It appears to be able to heal him, Samintas said in a gravely tone as he rubbed his chin. Apparently, Midnight agreed as she narrowed her eyes at the screen. And if he has that thing at his disposal, it would explain why he was so quick to do something so reckless. That device may be able to heal his injuries, even from a fall like that, but that doesn't mean he should be so reliant on it, Aizawa argued, groaning internally that his student was receiving more of a reason to risk his own life. Amazing. It's some sort of portable medical robot that is capable of transforming itself into pure energy and storing itself within the user, May exclaimed as she watched the screen with heats in her eyes. Bouncing in her seat. "Oh, don't worry, baby. Mama is going to begin working on you as soon as she gets out of here." I don't think so. After this, you are going to be banned from the workshop for a long, long time. Power Loader sighed, only for his words to fall on deaf ears. "You see that, Petra?" Izuku asked, picking up his revolver while standing up. After getting no answer, Izuku asked again. "Petra? Guardian? Must have knocked out the comm relays with that spectacular landing." "Who's Petra?" Toru asked curiously. "Probably that blue-skinned chick?" Kaminari shrugged. "And thanks to his stunt, his communications are out." Aizawa sighed, already fearing the worst. "That can't be good." Zero gulped, feeling worry building inside once more. Looking up, Izuku saw a large humanoid creature wearing yellow with strange purple orbs strapped around its chest. Turning his gaze to the right, the green-haired man spotted another creature, but this one had purple flames spewing from its head. Then, the hooded man spotted another, and another, before the screen zoomed back to reveal 5 large humanoids standing on the ledge over him. Izuku turned to the group while sighing and cue the ominous music. "That's really not good," Kaminari cried before being jabbed in the ear by Jiru's earphone jack. "No shit, Sherlock," Kyoka seethed whilst glaring at the blonde boy, the display going unnoticed by the other worried viewers. "Okay, everybody, back in your cages." Izuku chuckled as he held his hands up while the creatures readied their weapons. In response, the monster with a large metal symbol on its helmet raised its staff before slamming it back down, causing the crystal on the end to glow with a deep, blue energy. "I said," Midoriya growled, drawing his revolver with a spin as a swarm of smaller, yellow humanoids flooded out of the darkness. "Back in your cages. This is why you shouldn't do things recklessly." Aizawa grunted, rubbing the bridge of his nose now. He is surrounded by the enemy, outnumbered, and with no way to call for backup. "I don't like where this is going." Todoroki sighed in a monotone. As the creatures closed in, attacking from all sides, Izuku casually shot the first one over his shoulder without turning around, causing an explosion of pale blue energy as the bullet collided into the monster's head. The hooded man spun quickly on his feet as he began moving forward, throwing a knife into another creature, killing it instantly. Finishing his spin, Midoriya shot another creature in the head before a fourth, larger humanoid charged him from behind. Izuku effortlessly blocked the attack and let the creature push him backwards as he lined up his pistol with its throat, pulling the trigger and causing the creature to fall backwards, dead. "Oh, this one's got style." Snipe chuckled as he admired the green-hair man's accuracy. "He's just killing them." Mina gasped as the majority of her class stared at the screen with a mixture of shock and horror. "It's either them or him." Aizawa grunt, a cold, calculating gaze watching every movement on screen. "Yeah, but there has to be another way, right?" Achiko tried to arguing, almost looking for a reason to avoid watching the scene. "Deku would never dash." "Miss Uraraka." Midoriya does not have the luxury to hold back. Nizu stated in an authoritarian tone he isn't battling some random villain. These things were locked away for a reason and obviously have no arguments with killing him. Sometimes, one must put their own survival as their top priority. The students didn't reply, merely letting their focus remain on the screen. Quickly shooting another approaching creature, Izuku wasted no time in throwing a knife into the next opponent, killing it before the recently shot one hit the floor. Opening the chamber on his revolver, Midoriya spun the gun, letting the empty shells drop out before he stuffed a new set of bullets in and closed the weapon. The green-haired man ducked under a swing from one of the humanoids, causing it to stumble forward as he stood up. Placing his left hand on the hammer of his revolver, Izuku quickly fired a shot at the stumbling monster before turning and shooting another two of the creatures, killing them before the green-haired man fired on a red canister behind yet another creature. The canister erupted into a ball of fire, the force of the explosion taking the creature off its feet and flying towards Izuku, whom dodged it with a bow, causing the body to slam into another two creatures that were approaching from behind the man. Hell yeah, explosions for the win. Bakugo cheered with a vicious grin. Holy shit, that was manly. Kirishima grinned. They aren't humans, Shoto said suddenly, a small hint of relief in his normal monotone voice. What are you talking about, Todoroki? Yaoyorozu asked as she looked at the two-tone boy with a raised eyebrow. Those things Midoriya is fighting, they aren't humans. The son of Endeavor clarified. How can you be so sure? Toru asked as she presumably looked at the teen. He's right. Those creatures' physiology is too close to one another, yet too different from Midoriya's for them to be the same species. Midoriya is clearly human, which means they are not. Nizu confirmed and explained. The students nodded. The information was somehow making them feel better. Izuku bowed slightly to as the creatures fell, before calmly jumping over two more of the monsters that rushed his flank. More of the abominations swarmed to where the green-haired man once stood. A burst of light propelled the man further into the air and onto a large piece of rubble. The rubble shook as Midoriya landed on it, causing him to sway in order to regain his balance. The hooded man looked to his left and saw three more creatures already making his way over to him. Izuku pulled out a thin cylindrical device, and with a click of a button, he stuck the device to the side of a piece of debris, the handheld machine quickly emitting a thin, red beam of light. Midoriya shot two more of the creatures while walking away from the device, as they climbed up the side of the jagged metal, before he flipped to another pile as the original three creatures crossed the red light, causing the machine to erupt into a massive explosion that consumed the upper portion of the platform. Well, he seems to be able to handle himself pretty well, Midnight commented, relief underlining her tones. He's getting lucky, Aizawa said solemnly, briefly closing his eyes, and luck runs out. Izuku shot one of the creatures as it flew overhead, the blast having forced him to slide down the rubble. Once the green-haired man reached the ground, once more he was quickly grabbed from behind by yet another of the four-armed humanoids. The monster threw Midoriya towards a large piece of metal as the man yelped in surprise. Upon his impact, the hooded dropped his weapon as the metal shook and he fell along with it. Yup, that hurt. Izuku groaned as readjusted the metal horn under his hood. Looks like those things are stronger than most humans, Nizu said as he watched the creature casually throw a full-grown adult. Guess it's a good thing that is the first real hit he's taken then. Pixie Bob chuckled nervously, hoping to take the edge off of everyone's nerves. It doesn't matter if it's the first or not. Tomoko Shiratoko, former hero, Ragdoll sighed, her joyous tones still struggling to return after her encounter at the training camp. He won't be able to take many more of those. The creature that had thrown Izuku ripped a jagged shard of metal from the burning pile as the green-haired man picked up his revolver and began to rise to his feet. Midoriya looked towards the creature as it swung upwards, hit the man in his chest, and sending him flying with another scream of surprise and pain. Izuku crashed into a fallen bridge, rolling down the structure's segments before he pulled out a knife and stabbed into the metal, stopping his descent just after reaching the final piece that was holding on by just a single coupling. Looking down, the hooded man saw another four creatures ready to attack once he hit the ground. Quickly making a decision, Midoriya shot the coupling and jumped off the bridge, distracting the creatures as the large piece of metal fell on them. Quick decision-making, a useful trait to have. Aizawa grumbled as he stared at the screen with tired eyes. Sorry, Izuku exclaimed as he jumped back to his feet and looked at the fallen creatures before he turned around with a shrug. Not sorry. He can keep his calm too. Present Mike chuckled at the slight joke. That's pretty useful too, right, Shota? Making jokes on a battlefield is irrational and distracting. The tried man sighed. Izuku ran at the group of creatures, shooting one in the head as he got close and sliding under another as it leapt at him, shooting it in the head as well. So manly. Kirishima almost sobbed, covering his tears of joy with his forearm. He's well trained, Snipes stated as he leaned forward slightly. Every move he's making is done with precision and accuracy. Indeed, Nizu giggled with a nod, but against overwhelming numbers. Even the best training has its limits. Pushing himself back to his feet, Izuku slashed his knife across one of the approaching monsters before he shot another one. Midoriya clashed with a third as the screen pulled back, showing the larger humanoid still standing above the green-haired man, watching. One of the creatures readied its weapon as it stepped back and away from the group. Why haven't they joined in yet? Mina asked in confusion and worry, not liking that Izuku had yet to even begin on the biggest threats. They're letting him tire himself out first, Momo whispered in a horrified tone as she realized the plan for this alternate version. Izuku punched one of the creatures away before another attacked him from behind, hitting the green-haired man with enough force to send him flying into a piece of metal, which flipped with him and hit another creature. Midoriya landed in a crouched position, shooting another humanoid as he caught the plank of metal with his other arm. Another creature ran into the plank, overturning it as Izuku stepped along with it, emerging from under that metal and shooting another creature in the head. The blue energy left from the shot quickly dissipated, revealing a large horde already charging the green-eyed man. Is there no end to these things? Kaminari exclaimed as he ran a hand through his hair in frustration. At least he's handling himself better than you did at USJ. Jiru snickered as she pointed her ear jack at the blonde boy. Now, why do you have to bring that up? The electric user sighed as he dropped his head in defeat and shame. Izuku looked at the approaching group and shook his head slightly before he turned to run. The larger humanoid that left the group began to climb a wall as Midoriya ran by, weaving through more of the creatures. The hooded man shot one of the monstrosities as he ran by, more easily taking its place. The green-haired man shot another as he reached a small pile of rubble. Izuku jumped off the pile, his revolver beginning to glow orange with a bright light of power. The orange light quickly coated Izuku, illuminating the swarm behind him as he turned around in the air and took aim with his burning, golden weapon. That must be this Midoriya's power, Toru exclaimed as she bounced in her seat with excitement and anticipation. That looks so cool. Shiro cheered as he watched the golden energy dancing around the man like flames. Aoyama agreed as he rested a hand under his chin, but it does not sparkle like moi. But what does it do? Yaoyorozu asked as she gently laid a hand across her chest. It seems to be some kind of energy that he can channel through his gun, Snipe analyzed as he watched the strange energy. If you'd all shut the hell up, we're about to find out. Bakugo growled as he rolled his eyes, laying his chin on the palms of his hands. No, Izuku exclaimed as another creature tackled him through the air, the orange energy dissipating as they flew before they hit the ground. Oh, for fuck's sake. Katsuki roared in frustration, ignoring Ida's horrified gasp. Seems like those things aren't as mindless as the look. Midnight almost hissed as she winced at the impact the man took. Things are going downhill fast, Hisashi said in a trembling voice, biting his nails. But he has backup coming, right? At least that red-haired girl? Yaoyorozu asked hopeful, looking at her homeroom teacher as she desperately tried to find any hope in this situation. Who knows how long it would take her to arrive? Aizawa sadly stated, closing his eyes. The large creature that had separated from the group dropped from an overhanging post, wrapping its legs around the metal, causing it to hang upside down. The creature readied its rifle once again as another of the average-sized creatures approached the still-downed Izuku. Midoriya began to stand up, aiming his gun at the first creature, only for it to knock the weapon out of his hand with an upward swing. As the revolver slid across the floor, the green-haired man was forced to jump away as the creature slammed down on where he once was shattering the ground. What's he going to do now? Mineta asked as he watched one of the people he respected most as they were struggling to survive. He needs to get his weapon back. Without it, Ida said as he attempted to hold a serious and flat tone, fear and worry bubbling within for his friend. Izuku crashed to the ground, and through a thin layer of dust, he spotted his revolver a few feet away. Quickly, the hooded man leapt for the weapon, only for one of the creatures to grab him by his cape and yanked him away. The screen showed the large creature's sights as it looked through its scope and watched Izuku be thrown into the arms of another creature. The creature used all of its might as it shoved Midoriya head first into a wall of jagged metal, blood and flesh ripping from his face as his head bounced off of the hard surface. "Oh God!" Yaoyorozu gasped in terror as tears welled up in her eyes and her hands covered her mouth. "This is horrible." Mina choked out as her pink skin turned pale, her eyes also swimming with tears. "Damn it, Deku!" Bakugo growled as he glared at the screen, sparks jetting from his palms. "Don't you dare lose to these extras." Izuku dropped to the ground, rolling onto his back as the monstrosities began to surround him. Grunts of pain rang through the air as the creature began to kick and stomp on the downed man, animalistic growls following each blow. "This isn't right." Kirishima seethed through grinding teeth, his fingers digging painfully into his leg. He doesn't even have a way to defend himself. "I don't think they care about that," Todoroki stated in a monotone voice, his heterochromatic eyes glaring at the creatures as embers danced in the air around his left side. Suddenly, Izuku shot into the air, covered in an orange glow. The green-haired man swung his arms out, a plethora of golden knives manifesting and shooting into the creatures. The horde of monsters dropped to the ground, slowly turning into burning ash as Izuku landed on his feet, blood dripping onto the metal floor. "That's it," Izuku growled as he walked over and picked up his revolver. "Now, I'm pissed." "Fuck yeah." Kaminari cheered as the children's eyes and ears were already being covered by the nearby adults. "So, that orange light is some kind of fire ability?" Momo asked, gently laying a hand on her chest as relief filled her body. "Kinda like Todoroki's?" Toru asked, her body swiveling to look at the two-colored boy. "His is stronger," Shoto said. Earning a few confused looks, he was able to completely disintegrate all of them with one hit each and caused far less damage to his surroundings. "I may be able to produce more fire, but mine isn't that hot, and I don't have as much control." "Don't celebrate too early. He has yet to begin on the larger threats." Aizawa sighed, shaking his head as his class lost themselves to their emotions. "Can't you let them be happy that their friend is still alive?" Midnight hushed the tired man, gently smacking his arm. "Gah!" Izuku gasped as a final creature tackled him from the side and pinned him to a wall. "How many more of those things are there?" Mineta screeched as he curled up in his seat, his fellow students quickly going quiet. "They just keep coming." Toru mumbled in shock as she watched the man on the screen struggle. Blood dripped from the green-haired man's face onto the monster's yellow helmet as he struggled to move. Midoriya slowly began to turn his revolver, inciting a roar from the creature as it pushed it back once again. Turn his head to his left. Izuku noticed that his arm was still free and quickly grabbed the creature's shoulder before pulling it closer as he threw his head forwards. The metal spike he wore piercing through the helmet and causing it to fall limp. "Suddenly that horn doesn't seem so funny," Kaminari said quietly, earning a few nods of agreement, as he and the others watched Izuku kill the last creature. "Take this as a lesson," Aizawa groaned, snapping his students out of their stupor. "Even if something doesn't look dangerous, anything can be if used correctly." "I wonder if mine can do that," Mina asked herself softly as she gently rubbed the horns on her head. Izuku leaned back into wall as his horns slid out of the creature's skull. With a grunt, Midoriya began to limp through the battlefield littered with corpses and ash towards where the larger creatures continued to watch him from above. "Is that really all you've got?" Izuku shouted between pants, his body injured and struggling to move as his jaw showed signs of being fractured as his words were slightly distorted. "Looks like that was the last of the small fries," Snipe said as he watched the screen intently. "But now he has a much larger problem to deal with," Cementos replied, crossing his arms in front of his chest. "Was that meant to be a pun?" Present Mike asked as he turned his attention from the screen to his fellow teacher. "Is taunting them really a good idea?" Mandalay interrupted as she watched the screen with worry. "I don't think anything he does is a good idea," Aizawa answered as he rubbed the bridge of his nose. The screen showed the sniper scope focused on Izuku's wobbling form as he came to a standstill, the rifle charging with purple energy. "Help me out here, little buddy," Midoriya mumbled as he lifted his left hand and released the blue energy that reformed into the small drone from early. "I completely forgot about that thing," Zero exclaimed as he bounced with joy, smiling broadly. "Huh, doesn't matter how much damage they do to him. That little machine can just fix it all." Kirishima laughed as a grin split across his face, so manly. "But why has that creature taken a shot yet? It's had Midoriya in its sights for a while now," Momo asked herself as she gently rubbed her chin before her eyes widened with horror and realization unless. Once the drone materialized, the scope quickly moved onto it, wasting no time in firing the purple energy. The blast pierced clean through its target, shattering the machine and causing a pulse of blue energy to explode through the area, covering everything in a blinding light. "That's why you shouldn't rely so heavily on something like that," Aizawa mumbled as he closed his eyes. "What just happened?" Kaminari croaked out as he watched the screen in shock, his smiling melting off his face. "That's what they were waiting for," Yaoyorozu said as she once again felt fear grip her heart. "What do you mean?" Mina asked as she turned to the taller girl. "She's right," Nizu said sadly. "Earning the attention of the students, they must have known Midoriya possessed that device. So they sent those creatures after him, not to kill him, but to draw it out so they could destroy it. They knew all along." Todoroki stated in his usual monotone voice. "They were planning that from the very beginning." "It would seem so," Nizu confirmed, his usual cheer smile now a grim and saddened husk. "That poor baby," May mumbled, only to be ignored as the reality sunk into everyone present in the room. Izuku pushed himself off the ground as the light disappeared and the final shards fell down, his hood blown down and blood still dripping from his face. Looking up, the green-haired man was met with the sight of the larger creatures all jumping down into the pit with him. Izuku's face hardened as he watched them slowly approach, one dragging a large, spiked metal ball connected to a chain creating sparks as it moved forwards. The towering monster lifted the ball, causing it to burst into flames as it walked in front of the rest. "I'm coming home," Izuku said as he swallowed the lump growing in his throat and looked down at the revolver in his hand, turning it to show the spade symbol painted on the side. "Ace." "Who's Ace?" Toru asked as she presumably tilted her head. "Ace was his son," Snipe answered, his voice dry and emotionless. "How do you know?" Aizawa asked as he raised an eyebrow at the Western-themed hero. "I may not be as smart as you or Nizu, but I've been in enough battles to know that tone," Snipe replied, taking off his hat and placing it in front of his chest in a silent prayer, to know what it means. Izuku forced himself to stand up straight as he pulled his hood up once more. The green-haired man raised his gun once more, his arm shaking as it struggled with its own weight as the tall creature began moving towards him at a faster rate, moving its arms back as it prepared to attack. Midoriya kept his eyes locked on the creature as it swung the burning ball forward, the roar of flames echoing through the air. Half of the hooded man's face was covered in an eerie orange glow as the rattling of chains overtook the flames and the screen cut to black. Why didn't he try to dodge?" Mina asked as she stared in shock and horror. "He could barely walk. He couldn't have dodged if he wanted to," Midnight answered, biting the inside of her cheek. The room remained silent. No one knew what to say, what they could say. With a thunderous boom, a silhouette came crashing through the darkness, revealing it to be the other side of a wall, with the large creature standing in the center of the hole, its ball and chain slowly coming to a stop at its side. The black and white revolver that belonged to this Izuku bounced onto the concrete floor, clanking across the ground before coming to a stop, and the screen turned to static. He's not. Uraraka choked as she bit back a sob in realization, her voice cracking as she struggled against a scream in her throat. He couldn't be. We are watching major events. Not all of them will be victories, Nizu said as he dropped his head and closed his eyes, unconsciously rubbing the scar across his right eye. Not all of them will be pleasant. Chapter 5. Shouldn't we say something? Hisashi whispered to Aizawa, breaking the deafening silence. No, the tired man grunted, cracking his eyes open to watch his students, silently coming to grips with what they just witnessed. You know as well as anyone that death comes with being a hero. They need to learn how to move past it. Still, Present Mike sighed, frowning at the students. The only one of the class to truly experience death on a mission was Midoriya, and he wasn't here. Are you really fucking doing this again? Bakuga shouted as he once again lost his patience. Is this going to be a thing after every fucking time? What does it matter to you? Uraraka growled, wiping tears away as she glared at the blonde once more. If I'm being forced to watch alternate versions of that nerd, I'd rather not do it with a bunch of whiny bitches. Katsuki growled as he sent his own glare at the girl, ignoring the growing looks of anger from the rest of his classmates. Seriously? What is your problem? You just watch someone die, and you act like we're the ones that are in the wrong for actually feeling something. Ochako screamed as she stood up and began walking towards with clenched fist, only to stop as a hand gently grabbed her by the shoulder. That's enough, Uraraka, Ida said gently as he frowned at the brown-haired girl. You can't be serious, Ida. Deku's your friend, and he's just... The gravity user began, only to be cut off by the blue-haired boy. Midoriya is my friend, and I've learned a lot from him since we have met. Like there is no point in feeling angry about what you can't change, and not to focus on the past, or you'll be stuck in it. Tinya sighed as he closed his eyes, cutting off the tears that were brimming around his eyes. But, Uraraka stammered, struggling to justify herself. Ida is right. Midoriya wouldn't want us fighting amongst ourselves, Yaoyorozu stated as she stood up, elegantly wiping her own tears away. Our version or any other. Let's just watch the next world. Ochako grumbled with a pout, turning to the floating screen play universe. Hey, it was my turn, Denki yelled, only to yelp as Jiru jabbed him with her earphone jack. Oh, quit being a baby. You can get the next one. Kyoka sighed as she rolled her eyes. Realm display function engaged, preparing universe OWCH 634 AM VS S visual loading. Audio loading. The screen showed a hillside town with multicolored buildings, appearing to be in South American. Slowly the image panned over to an orange building with Panaderia Las Nieblas written above the doorway, housing 2 green doors. The right door creaked open and a young girl stepped out of the shop, holding a small bag that jingled with the sound of coins. I'm not a baby anymore. Mama, stop treating me like one, the girl exclaimed as she stepped onto the porch. Listen to me, Mihija, get the flour and get back quickly, no stops. A woman's voice came from inside the shop. Fine, the girl whined before stomping away, turning around briefly, struggling to find the words to shout before sighing and continuing to walk away. Where are they? Kaminari asked as he scratched his head. It looks like South America, Momo gleefully exclaimed, her eyes dancing with excitement. Huh, how do you know, Yamamo? Mina asked, while looking at her friend. My parents and I vacationed there 1 year. Oh, the landscape is beautiful, the rich girl explained as she all but bounced in her seat at the memory. Okay, but where's Midoriya? Aren't these supposed to be about him? Toru asked, turning her body to look at the taller girl. I'm sure he will turn up, Nizu supplied as he smiled calmly at the screen. It's more than likely that that girl will have some kind of importance to the events to come. I worry about Alejandra. The woman's voice sighed as the girl walked up the stairs in view from the interior of the shop before the screen cut to her at the top of the stairs. Every day? No longer a child, and nowhere near grown up. She is at a crossroads. Narration? That's new. Present Mike commented as he raised an eyebrow. It's more like someone is telling a story than watching an event, Cementos said as he rubbed his chin. Alejandra kicked a can before stopping in front of multiple destroyed posters. one of which prominently showed a familiar green-haired man, older, with a more muscular frame and chiseled jaw, with the words Los Protectors, as the voice continued. I tell her about the heroes that once saved our world time and time again, because I want to give her hope, even if the existence of heroes has been made illegal. Wait, what? Kirishima stammered as he and the rest of the room stared with wide-eyed at the screen. A world with no heroes? Kaminari questioned in shock. But why would they do that? Siyu asked as she frowned at the screen. We don't know what has happened in that world. Aizawa sighed as he closed his eyes. There's no point in questioning their decision. Either way, Midnight said before she licked her lips at the image on the poster, that boy definitely ages well. Settle down. Eraserhead groaned as he rolled his eyes, vaguely noting his female students turn crimson with blushes. Alejandra flinched as she came into an open area, clanking of metal against metal and nearly maniacal laughter filling the evening air. But I'm afraid that she will be forced to make a choice that will decide the direction of her life. The voice sighed as the screen showed three men gathered around a metallic object, laughing happily as they kicked and stomped on it. It is important for kids to have proper guidance, Ida proclaimed as he fixed his glasses, nodding with the screen. I wonder if that's why Bakugo turned out like this. Azui thought aloud, tilting her head as she placed a finger on her chin. What did you say, you frog bit? Katsuki began leaping to his feet as he began to climb over his fellow students to reach the green-haired girl, only to be suddenly stopped as his teacher's scarf wrapped tightly around him, pulling him back to his seat. Language, there are still kids around. Aizawa groaned, his eyes glaring a menacing red as he activated his quirk. Dropping her head down, the young girl tried to quickly walk past the group as they continued to beat on the object. Hey, Ale, where you going, girl? The member holding a bat called out, causing the girl to cringe as she began to pass. No, nowhere, Alejandra nervously said as the man approached her. Haha, nowhere's right. The man laughed, a golden tooth shining in the light of the street lamp as he swung his arm around the scared girl and pulled her to the object. Come here. You gotta see this. This doesn't exactly seem like the safest place for a kid to be late at night, Present Mike nervously exclaimed. Her mother did seem worried about letting her go out so late. Midnight sighed. The girl mumbled as she nervously followed the man's pull. Here, look at this thing, the vocal member of the group said, pointing his metal-covered bat at the object before shoving the weapon into the girl's hands. Give him what he deserves. I don't know, Alejandra mumbled as a humanoid machine looked up at her, pale blue eyes looking up as if it were pleading for mercy as sparks jumped across its body. That poor baby, May exclaimed in horror as she stared at the technological marvel. It looks so sad, Yaoyorozu said under her breath as she watched the machine, almost feeling the emotions it was. Maybe there are sentient machines in this world, Todoroki said as he stared blankly at the screen. That's horrible, Mina exclaimed as she glared at the screen. That's like beating someone up, then trying to force a kid to hit them too. Come on, kid, don't give in to peer pressure, Hisashi yelled, only to be shushed by the people around him. I gotta go, Alejandra exclaimed fearfully as she clutched the bat closer to herself, only for the man to start laughing again. Come on, do it. The man started calmly before yelling and pushing her towards the machine. It's just a bucket of bolts. The girl stammered as the machine continued to look on helplessly. I have to go to the store before it closes, or my mom is going to kill me. Woohoo! Good job, kid. Don't listen to what those jerks are saying. Mina cheered as the class smiled at the girl's choice. Wop, be hard without any money, Nina. Another member of the group laughed as he took the girl's coin purse, and the men began to throw it to each other as the girl began chasing after it. Hey, come on, give it back, I need it, Alejandra exclaimed as the men threw the coins around in a circle before the final member of the group placed a hand on the girl's head and kept the purse just out of her reach. What the hell? Leave her alone, you jerks, Kirishima yelled as he jumped to his feet, activating his quirk to harden his clenched fist. Idiot, you know they can't hear you. Bakugo sighed as he rolled his eyes at the red-haired boy's antics. I know, but still, man, she's just a kid. Ijiro sighed as he slumped back into his seat. Unfortunately, some people out there won't show mercy just because someone is just a kid. Showed aside as he took a sideways glance at Eri. Come on. A faint shout came from under the sound of a truck's horn as vehicle pulled up, floating in the air. The driver waved for the group to head to him. Let's go. Let's go. He faintly shouted over the roar of the engine. Hey, the young girl shouted as the men easily pushed her aside and jogged towards the truck, taking her money with them. Alejandra ran after them. The vehicle speed off as soon as the three men were on board. Where are you going? My money. The girl sighed as she grabbed her head before stomping her feet with a scream. Poor kid. Pixie Bob sighed as she shook her head. Without heroes in that world, I fear that is an all too common occurrence. Samintas said sadly, watching the students glare at the screen. Alejandra took off running, quickly weaving through a nearby alley and hopping onto a dumpster before climbing over a wall as she chased after the truck. Landing with a grunt, she made her way to a shabby wooden wall, peeking through a small crack just in time to see the vehicle pull up and the men hop off the back. What is she doing? Mina screamed, hurting the ears of those around her. The money isn't worth it, kid. Just let it go. People in poorer parts of the world don't get the luxury of picking how much something is worth, Miss Ishido. Nizu sadly chuckled. But, she could get hurt, the pink girl tried to justify. But the flower was important enough for the mother to send her out in the first place. They may not have enough money to lose that amount. The small mammal countered, silencing his student's argument. Ah! The girl screamed as she moved around the corner and came face to face with another thug, only for him to fall unconscious with a groan and sickening thud. What happened to him? Ciro asked as the group stared in confusion at the man suddenly falling over. Was he drunk? Kaminari guessed, only to be ignored. No, please. No. Faintly came from another alley before another man dropped out of the shadows, dropping a wooden bat with spikes as he hit the floor before being pulled back into the darkness. No. Something's happening, Aizawa said as he leaned forward, narrowing his eyes. I got a bad feeling about this. Hizashi shivered, biting his nails as he watched the screen with anticipation. Three men carrying boxes out of a nearby building and onto the truck vaguely noticed the commotion. Yo, go check that out. A blonde, shirtless man ordered the other two as he moved back inside. Alejandra gasped as she hid behind a nearby box as the men began to approach. This is like something out of a horror movie, Mineta said in a shaky breath as he hid behind his hands. Will that girl be okay? Todoroki asked in his usual monotone voice. A side view showed a figure dragging a groaning body past a spot of wood that barely classified as a wall, just as the two men passed the same spot. Hey, come on. Appa, get up. One of the men said as they knelt down to check on the fallen comrade, only for the man that had been dragged away to be thrown behind them and into a fuse box with a scream of agony and fear. I think those guys have bigger things to worry about than a little girl, Ojiro said in surprise as the class watched on in shock. What was that? One of the men asked as the fallen member stammered to his feet, the lights flickering before shutting off, causing the men's tattoos to glow in the dark. Wah! The risen member said as looked over his shoulder, barely missing the menacing red glow of what appeared to be eyes before they sank back into the darkness, confusing and disorienting the enemy, making them more prone to fear. Aizawa mumbled to himself as he watched the screen intently. What was that, Shota? Present Mike asked as he turned to his fellow teacher. Whoever that is, they are using tactics similar to an underground hero. Eraserhead answered as he continued to stare at the screen. Oh, I think we already know who that is. Niza giggled as he also kept watching. Did you see anything? Another man asked as they began to gather their weapons, a lone dog barking in the distance. Who's there? The third man shouted as they formed a circle around each other. Enough games. Pero, come out and fight. Finally some action. Bakuga grinned, baring his teeth out the call for violence. Is fighting all you think about? Uraraka groaned as she narrowed her eyes at the boy. You got a problem with that, round face? The explosion user growled as he turned his glare to the brunette. Enough. Their teacher's stern voice silenced the two and brought their attention back to the screen. A dull red glow turned one illuminated the back of one of the thugs' heads, drawing his attention towards the nearby alley, only for his eyes to widen as he turned and a heavy punch to sending him flying back into a wall. The two other members quickly attacked, only for a white-haired man, dressed in the outfit Izuku wore on the earlier poster, ducked under the green tattooed man's swing, spinning to elbow the pink tattooed man with enough force to sending his weapon spinning up into the air and the man flying back, revealing the white-haired man was wearing a glowing red visor. "Is that Midoriya?" Yaoyorozu asked as she watched with wide eyes. "He's wearing the same outfit that Midoriya was on the poster," Sato answered, in equal shock. "But he's so old," Toru mumbled, the only evidence that she was just as confused being her tone and posture. "That doesn't seem to be affecting him very much," Kaminari said nervously as flinched at the image of taking those hits. Grabbing the spinning weapon out of the air, Midoriya slammed it across the glowing green man's head as the purple tattooed man jumped onto his back, quickly knocking the man off with a sharp elbow and following it up with a backhand. Izuku continued his assault. "No, please, no," the pink tattooed man pleaded before the white-haired man grabbed him and threw him towards the purple thug as yet another one tried to attack him from behind. Effortlessly dodging the attack, the older Izuku knocked the orange tattooed man out with a single punch before turning and grabbing the purple man's own attack by the wrist and shoving him head first into the wall with a sickening crunch. Bah! Bakugu exploded into laughter, a vicious, animalistic grin at watching the battle. "That seems a little harsh," Ochako mumbled to herself as she watched the screen with a worried look. "It's effective," Aizawa corrected her, watching the fight closely, quick and decisive strikes, leaving no room for them to counter or call for backup. "Yeah, and they just stole from a little girl," Mina exclaimed, sounding as though she were trying to convince herself more than anyone else. "So manly," Kirishima whispered as he watched the fight with stars in his eyes. Izuku growled as he saw another gang member walk out holding another box, the blonde jumping in surprise as he saw the unconscious bodies on the ground around the old man. Dropping the box he was carrying, the shirtless thug whistled as he hopped onto the truck and pried open a box, sifting through the piñatas that filled it till he pulled out a large minigun from it with a roar. Midoriya dove into another alley as the blonde man opened fire, and another 3 members appeared on the roof, each wielding rifles as they too fired down onto the elderly man. "That seems like overkill," Kaminari shouted as he watched screen with shocked eyes. Being fired on from so many different angles will make it difficult for him to launch a counterattack. Ida thought aloud as he analyzed the situation in front of him. "Is Deku going to be okay?" Eri asked as she gripped Mirio's sleeve tightly, pulling it to slightly hide her face. The blonde only chuckled nervously in response. "You are right, Ida, it will be difficult." Nizu laughed with a calculating smile slowly spreading across his rodent-like muzzle, "but not impossible." Jump out of the alley. Izuku rolled through the hail of gunfire before firing 3 blue rockets at the minigun user, the truck exploding and sending charred piñatas through the street. The men on the roof covered their eyes briefly before continuing to fire, only for the old Midoriya to run forward, jumping off a box and spinning midair to face them. Touching the side of his visor, a hologram projected over his face, highlighting and targeting each of the thugs. Izuku fired 3 shots before he landed on a dumpster, denting the lid as each bullet hitting one of the men and causing them to fall from the building. "So manly," Kirishima cried as tears rolled down his cheeks while he covered his eyes with his forearm. "Incredible," Yaoyorozu gasped, staring amazed at the man on the screen. He moved into the space between their gunfire, targeted each of them, and took them all down within seconds of each other. "Kid's got himself some talent," Snipe chuckled as he leaned back in his seat. "Yeah, okay, but did you see that, baby? It was some kind of auto-targeting system," May exclaimed as she bounced happily in her seat. "I know what you are thinking, and you are out of your mind if you think I'm going to let you near firearms." Power Loader sighed as his student began to mumble to herself about how the visor works. Midoriya climbed off the dumpster, the burning truck behind him as he slowly made his way to one of the men he knocked out earlier, the bodies of the thugs falling to the ground around him as the street glowed a dull orange. "Oh no," the tattooed man pleaded as Izuku got closer, picking up a burning piñata as he slowly approached the man that desperately crawled away. No, no. No, 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 no. Please. Please, please, please. These aren't your streets any more. Izuku growled, punctuating each sentence with a vicious blow to the head with the smoldering party toy. Alejandra flinched with each blow before screaming as the man fell limp, causing Midoriya to look at her with a growl. And right back to being brutal. Zero joked as he flinched with each blow. Are all of these going to be a roller coaster? Sato asked as he began feeling uncomfortable at each continuous blow. That definitely isn't making the girl feel safe. Tiger sighed as he watched the girl shake with fear. No, please, the young girl cried as she tried to crawl away, only for another truck to pull up next to the burning vehicle. Get on the truck, a gang member shouted as he leapt off the truck and quickly helped some of his comrades get on board. Let's go. You don't get off that easy. Izuku roared as he began to charge at the vehicle. Why is he more worried about the criminals than the scared kid? Toru asked. It was strange to see any Izuku so unconcerned about others. Remember, heroes were banned in this world. Nizu chimed in solemnly in response. It seems this Midoriya has taken up a more callous vigilante approach to crime. Eat this. A man with orange tattoos shouted as he pulled the pin on a grenade and threw it at Midoriya. Ah! Alejandra screamed as the grenade landed next to her as she desperately tried to crawl away from it. Izuku looked back to her and then to the truck as they started to drive away, the grenade beeping rapidly before it exploded and filled the street with fire and smoke. Why was he hesitating? Siyu questioned as she tilted her head. He's probably been fighting villains for so long without civilians around that he has had to make the choice between the two. More than likely, he's used to just focusing on the enemy without having to worry about other people. Midnight sighed as she placed her head down, wondering just what kind of world they were watching. That's oddly profound for you, Aizawa said as he gave his coworker a sideways glance. Her own fault for getting in the way. Bakugo snorted, crossing his arms. That's your opinion? Shocker. Ochako mumbled as she rolled her eyes, ignoring the growl from the blonde. Midoriya slid across the ground, covered in ash and dust with his back to the screen. Grunt and groaning, the formerly green-haired man slowly made his way to his knees, moving to reveal Alejandra unharmed and cradled in his arms. The young girl looked at Izuku with wide eyes, scooting backwards as he stood up, clutching his side in agony. Midoriya gasped and growled as he wobbled on his feet, clenching his fist as he held his left side with his right hand, snapping his head to where the truck had escaped to. See, you were all worried about nothing. Katsuki groaned, a blank face hiding any of his emotions. Class 1A ignored. Bakugo smiled as they watched the girl emerge unharmed. Some things never change. The majority of the teachers smiled as well, knowing that their student will still make the right choice. Eri and Kodo were happy to know that it wasn't just their Deku that was willing to save people no matter what. You saved me, the girl said, her voice hushed from shock as she looked down and then back to the injured man. Why? With a growl, Izuku snapped his head back to Alejandra, the girl reflexively flinching backwards as he spoke softly. Old habits die hard, I guess. That's one way to put it. Yagi laughed, donning a wide smile. Once a hero, always a hero. Nizu said thoughtful. Ignore All Might's shaking as the man thought of his former mentor. Run home, kid. It ain't safe out here, Midoriya said as he threw an object at the girl. Alejandra caught the item, only to quickly realize it was her coin purse that had been stolen from her. You're one of those heroes, aren't you? The girl shouted, leaping to her feet as the man turned around and picked his rifle up before beginning to walk away. Izuku only made it 2 steps away before he stopped, his back to the girl, and looked over his shoulder only to solemnly say, "Not anymore," before disappearing into the shadows of the alley. "I think you are," the girl said as she watched him vanish, her voice filled with hope and admiration. With that, the screen faded to black. "Way to go," Deku Ochako cheered. "No matter what world, Midoriya is still the hero." "Manly," Kirishima whispered again. "Are you okay? You just keep saying that over and over again." Zero asked his red-haired classmate. "Wait, how did he know that purse was hers?" Kaminari asked, his voice drowned out by the room's conversation. I still wish we could have seen him in action when he was younger. Midnight said as she licked her lips, chuckling to herself as she watched her students blush once again. Carrying a bag of flour, Alejandra ran down the street as fast as she could, only to pass by the poster from earlier. Quickly turning around, the girl grabbed the poster before taking it with her as she continued her way to her home. Pulling open her door, the young girl was met with her mother's voice. "You're late. Mihija, I've been worried sick." "Oh, I'm sorry, Mama, but you won't believe what happened tonight." Alejandra exclaimed. She closed the door. "Los muertos. They came, and they took my money." The girl's voice drifted as her mother narrated once more. "And then there are the times when I see her smile and the hope in her eyes, and I think maybe I don't need to worry about Alejandra after all." The camera panned away from the bakery, slowly revealing the older Izuku watching from the rooftops above, ensuring Alejandra made it home safely. With his job done, Izuku once more disappeared into the night, leaving the camera focused on the moon as the screen turned to static. "Well, we got a happy ending for a change," Present Mike exclaimed with a joyous smile. "As happy as it can get. Heroes are still illegal in that world." Aizawa sighed as he shook his head. "Oh, come on, at least no one died." Mina cheered as she pouted at her teacher. "Whatever. I'm taking a nap." The black-haired man groaned as he laid down onto the ground. "Well, it seems Midoriya, in any world, can't stop himself from helping others," Tenya said as he adjusted his glass. "Whatever helps you sleep at night, for eyes." But Kugu taunted, ignoring the class president's gasp and the glares from the other students. "Seriously, how did he know it was her purse?" Kaminari shouted again, only to be ignored once more. Chapter 6. "I'm telling you, it doesn't make any sense that he knew it was her purse," Kaminari insisted, raising his voice as he threw his hands into the air. "No one cares, dunce face." Bakugo roared, turning to face the lightning user with a harsh glare. "Yeah, man, you've been going on for years," Siro said, gently placing his hand on Denki's shoulder. "It's barely been 5 minutes." The electrification user sighed, his head dropping as he slumped into his chair. "It's called hyperbole, dude," Mineta replied like he was stating the obvious, leaning back in his chair as he looked up, only to see a flicker of color to appear in the air before it disappeared just as fast. "Huh? What the dash?" "I know that. I dash," Kaminari yelled, turning to his short, perverted friend before noticing the confused look on the grape boy's face. "You good?" "I just saw something," Minoru exclaimed, pointing seemingly randomly into the air, drawing the fellow boy's attention to where he was pointing. Dude, there's nothing there." Hanta deadpanned at the empty air, mirror the other boy's looks of boredom. "I swear, there was something there." The human grape defended with a screech, earning eye rolls from the three. "So what other worlds do you think we'll see?" Mina asked her fellow female students, tilting her chair back to lean into her group of friends. "I mean, we could literally see anything. We watched Green trick some kind of giant space god. Nothing is off limits anymore," Jairu said casually, twirling her earlobe around her finger. "I don't know," Urarika said as she poked her bottom lip as she thought to herself, maybe there are some worlds closer to our own. I'd like to see him a little more familiar. Maybe there is a world where Midoriya and Bakugo get along? Siyu questioned, tilting her head to the side as her tongue poked out of her mouth slightly. "Oh," Toru suddenly exclaimed, bouncing in her seat. "What if there's a world where he has a girlfriend?" Who do you think he'd end up dating?" Ashido squealed in joy, slamming all the legs of her chair down, her question causing all the girls to burst into a deep blush as they let their imagination run wild. "It's nice seeing them unwind and relax," Midnight mused as she watched the students talk among themselves, laughing as she saw the girls' faces turn bright red. "It helps that we finally got to see a universe with a happier ending." Hisashi chuckled, also watching the students. "Still, I can't help but feel we're forgetting something." Cementos pondered, lightly tapping his chin. "I know what you're talking about," Snipe agreed, readjusting his hat like something is missing. "Well, it's not like we can really do anything about it now, can we?" Tashinori tried to reassure the two. "I guess not." The two sighed, trying to shake the strange feeling. "Mr. Mirio?" The teacher's attention was drawn to the soft voice of Eri as she gently tugged on the third-year student's sleeve. May I play the universe, university or world thingy? Universe, sweetheart, and of course. Togata corrected before approving the child, smiling brightly as the little girl gave a determined nod. Play universe, the horned girl declared, lighting up with a smile when the screen came to life. Realm display function engaged, preparing universe DCIJ 11832, J, NM, visual loading, audio loading. Wait, wah, Kaminari exclaimed, turning from his argument with the great pervert when he noticed the screen activate. Oh, come on, it was my turn. Don't be a baby. Jiru cut off the boy's whining, her glare hardening when she noticed the little girl shrink back slightly. This is your fault. Denki pouted at his short friend, who opened his mouth to argue, but was quickly silenced by the pout shifting into a glare. The Joker is no longer in Metropolis. A beautiful woman with long black hair, wearing a golden chest plate and tiara, spoke into an earpiece as she held three men tied in a golden, glowing rope. He's stolen a submarine with Harley Quinn. Joker? What kind of name is that? Toru asked, looking at the screen in what seemed to be confusion. Is it like Miss Joke? God, I hope not. Aizawa muttered at the thought of a second joke. Well, he apparently stolen a sub, so is he a criminal? Snipes suggested, glancing at his fellow teachers. But why steal a submarine? Sato asked, frowning to himself. Is it just for a joy ride or something? And maybe it's for some kind of J-joke? Koda all but whispered, speaking up for the first time. He is called the J-Joker. What kind of joke would you need a submarine for? Kirishima asked, scratching his cheek. Maybe if you idiots ever shut the hell up, we'd find out. Bakugo growled, not bothering to even look away from the screen. They took Lois with them. A muscular man wearing a blue uniform with a red cape heard the woman's voice through his own earpiece. Gritting his teeth with a frown, the black-haired man pushed himself forward through the air, easily breaking the sound barrier as turned around. Quickly reaching the water, the costumed man's speed easily displaced the water as he flew into the open ocean. Stopping seemingly randomly over the water, the man stared down before his vision pierced through the waves and highlighted the submarine. I see it, the powerful man declared before leaning forward. Batman, one of the warheads, is missing. So fast, the students exclaimed in shock, the entire group's eyes widening. That speed is insane. Zero gasped in surprise, his mouth dropping. I don't think even All Might is that fast. Ojiro followed up, earning nods of agreement. And that appears to be X-ray vision, Momo said to herself, holding her chin gently. Does he have multiple powers? Seems like it. Todoroki shrugged, following the principal's advice to keep an open mind. So, I'm guessing he must know this. Lois, Tiger mumbled, watching the man's reaction, and they must be pretty close, based on his reaction. Oh, Batman. Mina caught smiling broadly. Is this another Batteria universe? Wait, warhead? As a nuclear warhead? Mandalay asked suddenly, causing the group to freeze in fear. The haired man dove into the ocean, easily catching up to the aquatic vehicle before moving underneath it. The screen showed the surface of the sea break apart as the submarine breached the water, only for it to keep rising, completely leave the water to reveal the muscular man lifting the submarine entirely out of ocean. The costumed man easily flew the machine back to the dock before slamming it onto the solid ground. The powerful man burst through the hull and dove into the submarine, finding it filled with a strange, green gas, but he paid it no mind as he looked around before running deeper into the craft. So strong, the crowd shouted once again, disbelief echoing through the room. Could you have lifted that? Mirio asked All Might, both of their eyes wide as they stared at the screen. Not nearly that easily. Yagi sighed with a shake of his head, briefly lamenting the loss of his former powers. But what's with that gas? Kyoka asked, frowning slightly at the strange colored air. Maybe that's the joke? Denki suggested, earning looks over curiosity from the rest of his classmates. Subs give you gas. I think we should revoke your right to talk. Katsuki snapped, groans and agreement ringing from the group. The caped man ran into a room with two more people, one wearing a red and white nurse outfit and the other a purple suit. both wearing gas masks. The man in the purple suit peeled off a glove as they both turned around, revealing a familiar head of green hair. The dark-haired man's breathing became labored as he stared at the two, shaking his head as the world began to become distorted. The two wearing masks began to change, their faces shifting into skulls with a shake and then back again. "Where is she?" the powerful man demanded, causing the other two to raise their hands defensively and step aside as a massive creature stood up. The towering creature began to walk towards the blue-suited man, its face shifting and changing with each thunderous step. "Midoriya!" Everyone yelled in shock once more as they saw their friend's face painted white like a clown. "Wait, Midori is the Joker?" Mina asked, completely confused. "But what about Batman? I thought he was Midori." "Maybe it's a different Batman," Jiro suggested with a shrug before she froze as she realized something. "Wait, does this mean Green is a villain? If he's called the Joker, maybe he's not that bad?" Ochako said in vain hope for her friend. "Maybe he just pulls pranks or something?" "So, I guess that girl is Harley Quinn?" Mashireo asked as he frowned at the screen. "She's kinda hot." Mineta drooled before being silenced by a tongue slap from Tsuyu. "None of that matters. He's still a villain," Ida solemnly stated, frowning at his friend's villainous counterpart. "More important. What is with those hallucinations? Perhaps that gas is a hallucinogenic." "Even that doesn't matter," Aizawa cut in, silencing his students. "More importantly, where is this Lois, and what is with that creature? If it's stepping up to that man, it must be powerful." Midnight sighed, staring at the monstrosity. "Doomsday!" the blue-eyed man shouted defiantly, only to be met by Doomsday letting out a roar that shook the submarine. "No, I will not let you hurt anyone." The superpowered man charged the beast, quickly grabbing it before flying upwards, dragging the monster through the hull and into the sky. "So that thing's name is Doomsday," Mineta squeaked. The idea of something powerful enough to be called Doomsday caused him to shake with fear. "Whatever it is, it's clearly strong enough that even that man is afraid he can't protect people with it around," Pixie Bob summarized, wondering what kind of power that thing possesses. "But that begs the question," Aizawa mumbled in a gruff tone. "Why is that thing with the problem child? Maybe he has it for that flying guy?" Hisashi suggested, looking over to his friend like some kind of bodyguard or distraction. "If that were the case, then why did he need the submarine or the gas?" Nizu asked, narrowing his eyes at the screen. "It feels like we are missing a piece of the puzzle." "Time to go now, honey," Joker sighed, turning to the blonde as they exited the sub through the hole. The powerful man had made good guys are coming, and they tend to get punchy. "Ah," Harley exclaimed as the two turned to walk away, chuckling, only to be grabbed by a hand of glowing green energy and shoved into a nearby car. "You're not going anywhere," a man wearing a green suit declared, the energy emanating from his hand, as he was quickly followed by the black-haired woman and Batman. "Oh, it's Batman," Mina exclaimed, pointing at the screen while bouncing in her seat. "But that's definitely not another version of Midoriya," Shoji pointed out, noticing that the man under the cowl was indeed a different person. "Interesting, so in one universe Midoriya is the Batman, but in another he is this Joker," Nizu analyzed, fascinating. "Like two halves of the same coin, perhaps?" "Scarecrow's fear toxin, mixed with kryptonite particles," Batman stated as he used a device to analyze the gas before walking up to the restrained Izuku. "What did you do?" "I'm pulling the best joke ever. It will be my masterpiece." The clown-faced Midoriya growled before shifting into maniacal laughter as Batman's face morphed in realization and horror. "Fear toxin?" Ijiro asked, tilting his head to the side. "What's that do make things scarier?" "Perhaps," Momo answered, also frowning at the screen. "But what is this kryptonite? I've never heard of it." "That's not important," Todoroki stated, causing the girl to flinch and the class to look at him. "What matters is, if this is some kind of joke," Bakugo cut in, finishing the bicolored boy's thought as he narrowed his eyes at the screen, "then what's the punchline?" "Superman, stop. Whatever you're seeing," Batman ordered as he touched a communicator as the screen showed Superman flying into orbit, pushing Doomsday in front of him. "It's not real." "Not real?" Hagakure questioned, shifting in her seat, her tone laced with confusion. "What is he talking about?" "Yeah," Minoru shouted, pointing at the screen as if to accuse it of something. "We saw that monster ourselves." If that wasn't real, what was it? Ida asked, looking down as he rubbed his chin. No, Ragdoll whispered, her eyes widening in horror. It couldn't be. Superman slowed as he processed the man's words, his face changing into silent shock. The Custom man let go of Doomsday and watched it slowly, lifelessly float away from him. The dark-haired man slowly blinked and watched the vision of the monstrosity fade away and be replaced with the image of a brown-haired woman, a fresh, deep cut stapled close on her chest. Disbelief showed on the man's face as he gently flew over to the woman, softly taking her into his arms. The super-powered man stared at the cut on the woman's chest, his X-ray vision peering through the wound, and showed her heart, a strange device with a green light attached to the beating organ. Well, what? Yamamo gasped as she covered her mouth, her eyes widening in horror. Wait, who's that? Kirishima asked, stared in disbelief. That must be Lois. Tomoko answered, watching the screen sadly. She already understood the depths of some people's cruelty. That toxin must have made this Superman hallucinate her as that monster. Ida said solemnly, adjusting his glasses as he put the pieces together before mumbling. But what is that device on her heart? But why? Toru managed to squeak out, not turning her gaze from the man holding the woman on the screen. That was his plan all along. Bakugo answered this time through gritted teeth as he glared at the screen. That's his idea of a fucking joke. How is this a fucking joke? Uraraka roared as she turned from the screen, glaring at the ashy blonde. She could die. I never said it was fucking funny. Round cheeks. Katsuki yelled back, turning his glare to the brown-haired teen besides. He's a villain. He wouldn't care. And maybe she'll be okay? Mina tried to hold out hope. How long can someone survive in space? The beating of a heartbeat monitor sounded off throughout a clock tower, matching the rhythm of Lois's heart. A device, hastily taped to a wall, showed the beating as Superman continued to stare at the unconscious woman's heart. As the powerful man watched the brown-haired woman's heart finally stop beating, the device on her heart turned red and the machine in the watchtower let out a resounding beep one last time. No. Midnight gasped as she realized what was about to happen. Toga and Shino covered Eri and Koda's eyes as they realized as well. Cover your eyes now, Aizawa ordered his students, but his warning was too late and went unheard. A monstrous explosion turned the tower to dust. People walking calmly down the street were engulfed by a bright light before being turned to ash. Two businessmen turned from a table when they noticed the blast, looking out the window as they were bathed in the atomic light, their flesh burning away before their skeletons followed suit. Couples walking in the park turned to the thunderous noise as they too were consumed by the expanding inferno. No one was given the chance to scream, to run, to realize what was happening. The three heroes turned from Harley and the Joker, watching the expanding ball with shock and confusion. No one said a word. No one could say a word as any they tried to form died in their throats. Everyone stared in abstract horror at the devastation. The stoic Todoroki couldn't suppress the look of absolute shock and terror, nor could the usually argumentative Bakugo. Everyone just stared, trying desperately to understand what they were watching, trying desperately to find some form of reason. Tada! The Joker sung out before breaking out in maniacal giggles that quickly changed into full-blown laughter. Brace yourselves, the Green Heroes declared as he created a bubble of energy around the group, never turning away as they watched the explosion continue to expand, consuming and destroying the city skyline. Entire skyscrapers were engulfed and torn apart, and as the barrier finished forming, the shock wave finally reached them, rushing past and covering everything as the screen was consumed by a burning white. Tad! Katsuki roared, leaping from his seat with enough to knock his chair over as he glared at the screen with nothing but pure hatred. That's all you have to say. You. Fucking circus freak. I'll fucking kill you myself. For once I agree. Todoroki growled, his eyes holding only contempt. That didn't just happen, right? I'm dreaming, right? Mineta croaked out, unsure what to believe anymore though. Normally my dreams have far more boobs. What just happened? Azui asked, not having the strength to even acknowledge the pervert's statement. The missing warhead. Yaoyorozu realized, her eyes wide with shock and fear. He rigged it to Lois's heartbeat, and when she died, It went off. Aizawa finished, his gaze never leaving the screen. He then tricked Superman into killing her himself in order to cause the bomb to detonate. But Deku would never, Uraraka tried to say, only to be cut off by Bakugo. We've been over this, round face. That's not the fucking Deku we know. The explosive blonde growled, still glaring at the screen, and at this point, I wouldn't even call him human. Ochako couldn't find herself arguing with the brash teen, instead agreeing with him. They had seen another version of their friend as a villain, but this was completely different, like some sort of sick, twisted joke. You took his wife. Batman's voice stated as Superman descended into the smoldering crater that was once a city, gently holding Lois's corpse in his arms. While ash and smoke filled the air and embers fell from the sky, Superman fell to his knees. The brown-haired woman's hand fell to her side, revealing a golden ring with a large diamond adorning it. As the costumed hero gently laid his hand on the woman's stomach to the crackle of the burning flames across the devastated city, Batman continued, you took his unborn child and his city. She was pregnant? Ryuko whispered, her heart weeping at the scene before her. How could anyone be so cruel? Toru gasped, tears rolling down her cheeks, revealing the contours of her face. No one answered. That was the question they were asking themselves. Why? Batman growled as he leaned over a table, separating himself from the Joker, the two now in a room that appeared to be a police interrogation room. After all these years, Batsy, you really need reasons from me? The green-haired man drawled out, a wide, psychotic grin splitting his face as he looked at the scowling man. This has always been about us. The Dark Knight snapped back, leaning into the clown whose smile never faltered. Why do this to him? Who the fuck cares? Bakugo roared, still standing, and glaring at the screen. Just kill the bastard. Bakugo, enough? Tinya demanded, turning to face the angered boy. What? The explosive blonde turned his anger towards the bifocaled boy. You can't tell me he doesn't deserve it. No one's saying that. No one could say that, the class president clarified, matching the blonde's glare with one of his own as he stood up to face the shorter boy. But everyone is already in shock and trying to process what just happened, and you yelling and cursing is not helping. Like I give a sure, Katsuki began, taking a step forward, only to be cut off. Enough, both of you, Aizawa demanded, wrapping the two in his scarf with a glare of his own. Sit down. Arguing will do no one any good. Seems you were right, Snipes said to Nizu, attempting to change the subject as the students followed their teacher's orders. They do have some kind of connection. Indeed, the two do seem to have some kind of connection, the principal replied, watching the screen with a deep frown. But, Toshinori urged the mammal to continue, vaguely hoping for anything to distraction him from this twisted version of his successor. This Batman seems more concerned by who he targeted rather than what he did, Nizu grimly stated, his eyes gaining a calculating gleam to them. Which means? Ectoplasm questioned, wanting his boss to elaborate. Which means? The principal paused, stealing his vision and collecting his thoughts. Which means that this version maybe be well established for acts of insanity. Because every time you and I play, I lose. Joker growled back, leaning in with his wide smile before standing up and walking towards the one-way glass, staring at his own reflection. So, I thought I'd try a game on easy mode for once. And it was as easy as beating a puppy to death with a kitten. Batman didn't look up as the Joker broke into maniacal laughter, keeping his gaze locked on the table with a deep scowl. Eek! Koji squeaked, shrinking back in his seat as everybody's faces paled. I think I'm going to be sick, Rikito whispered, his voice carrying through the deathly silence as if he were shouting as the group nodded in agreement. Kal-El, Clark. The black-haired woman spoke softly as she gently laid a hand on Superman's shoulder as he silently held his dead wife. Diana, Clark acknowledged solemnly, his eyes filled with despair. I killed them. No, that madman orchestrated this, Diana stated defiantly, removing her hand as she furrowed her eyebrows. He's responsible. Only him. Will you keep her safe? Kal-El asked, gently leaning his head against his wife once more as he held her against his chest. Of course, the female hero assured, taking the deceased victim into her arms as Superman leapt into the sky, flying off with a thunderous boom. "The hell?" Pixie Bob yelled, bewildered. "Why isn't she stopping him?" "Stopping him?" Koda questioned, looking up at his aunt as he was unsure what had happened whilst his eyes were covered, just that it was bad. "That man has suffered an immeasurable loss," the telepath hero gently explained, rubbing the child's back. "He needs to be given time to grieve, or he may do something he'd regret. Whatever he does is too good for that clown-faced bastard." Bakugo grumbled under his breath, going ignored by everyone, but confusing the children even more. "Superman, are you okay?" the green-suited hero asked as he flew up next to Clark over a field of crops. "Where is he?" Kal-El growled, his voice showing barely contained rage. "Where is the Joker?" "Batman took him to Arkham Asylum," the brown-haired man answered, "but I don't think you should be anywhere near him." Superman didn't reply, instead pushing himself to go faster, easily breaking the sound barrier and panicking the other hero. The Emerald Man sent glowing energy after the dark-haired man, catching up to him and encasing him in a green bubble. "You've had an unfathomable loss," the green hero urged as he flew in front of the bubble, holding his arms up in a calming manner. "You need time to process it." "At least someone gets it," Yawara sighed, shaking his head slightly. "Arkham Asylum. That sounds like mental hospital." Uraraka spoke up, looking slightly hopeful. "And maybe they'll get that Deku help? Maybe he'll get better?" "Perhaps." Momo reluctantly agreed, looking conflicted. "He does seem extremely mentally unstable, but given what he has done, it may not be possible to rehabilitate him." Ida finished solemnly, causing the class to cringe. Superman glared at the other hero through the energy bubble before reeling his fist back and smashing through the barrier. The green-suited man grunted as the shield broke, and as he pointed his fist at Clark once more, energy brimming to be released. Before anything could happen, Kal-El's hand blurred across the brown-haired hero. The Emerald hero looked on in shock as the black-haired man opened his hand to reveal a green ring resting in his palm. The green suit disappeared, revealing the smaller hero in a brown flight suit before he began to plummet to the ground with a yell. Superman swooped down and caught the depowered man, gently setting him on the ground. "Please don't do something you'll regret for the rest of your life," the brown-haired man pleaded, turning to face Clark. "I already have," Superman corrected, slowly backing away before flying off, leaving the man behind to stare at him as he left. But he didn't do anything," Mina shouted, confused at Superman's words. "He was drugged, yes, but that was part of the Joker's plan," Aizawa explained, sighing as he closed his eyes. He knew how Superman would react and used that against him. There were things he could have done differently, but he rushed in and played into the Joker's hands. "Isn't that a bit harsh?" Namuri scowled at her co-worker, whilst Hizashi frowned at his friend. "No, it's not," Eraserhead replied sharply, turning to look at the woman. "I'm not saying he is at fault. No one could blame him for what happened, but it's clear he is suffering from some form of survivor's guilt and thinking of what he could have done differently and blaming himself for the choices he did make." "Okay, but that appears to be some kind of hard light projector contained in a ring," Hatsum mumbled to herself as she watched the green hero's powers were linked to the ring. "Amazing. I wonder what it uses as a power source." "Someone took everything from you, didn't they? And look at what you became." The punching, kicking embodiment of wrath. Joker giggled to Batman, turning to walk towards the scowling hero. "What do you think he'll become? A god who deluded himself into believing he was just a man? What will Superman turn into?" "There are some things even you can't corrupt, Joker," Batman stated confidently, staring straight ahead as the clown paced around the room. "Oh, Batsy, it only took me one bad day to become this, and your pal Superman just had one very bad day." The green-haired man laughed, still smiling broadly at the hero. "Do you honestly think he'll still be fun to play with?" "Oh, one day." Denki balked in shock, his jaw dropping and eyes burning with rage. "It only took him one bad day to become that monster." "Unfortunately, that may be more true than it sounds." Nizu sighed, gently closing his eyes and lowering his head. "What do you mean?" Jiro asked with trepidation, looking at the principal, almost afraid of the answer. "People are not simply born as villains. Most are merely victims of circumstance. The strange mammal explained solemnly, opening his eyes to match his students' gazes. Most are, as he said, one bad day away from becoming, as Kaminari put it, monsters. One bad day. Katsuki and Yagi thought to themselves, each remembering moments with the green-haired boy. Bakugo remembered urging the green-haired boy to take a swan dive off of a roof, and Toshinori remembering when he told the boy to abandon his dreams, each unknowingly remembering the same day. He'll grieve, Batman answered defiantly, narrowing his eyes at the Joker, but he will continue to be the best man I know. Oh no, this time the joke is on you. The clown giggled, pointing his cuffed hands at the scowling man. Sitting down once again, and the world shall burn. As the green-haired man once again broke down into psychotic laughter, the dark-themed hero opened his mouth to argue back when the room began to shake. The building began to shake. Batman looked around in shock as dust started to fall like the room itself had begun to come apart, whilst the Joker continued to laugh. Suddenly the wall behind Batman was blasted down, and as the dust settled, Superman was standing there, eyes glowing a menacing red. Shit, Pixie Bob whispered with a click of her tongue. Time to pay, you circus reject. Bakugo all but cheered, growling as he leaned forward in his seat, eager to see karma at work. Why didn't anyone warn Batman Superman was coming? Tomoko asked, frowning nervously at the screen. Would he have been able to do anything if they had? Tiger questioned, raising an eyebrow at his teammate. The guy was literally called a god, and neither one argued with it. What's going to happen now, Mirio? Eri asked while looking at the third year with large, watery eyes. She didn't understand why everyone was against this Deku when they had all been rooting for him before. The normally energetic teen didn't say anything, merely swallowing the lump in his throat as he and Sosaki moved their hands to cover the children's eyes quickly if necessary. Get away from him, Superman demanded, cutting off the Joker's laughter. I'm handling this, Batman growled, raising a hand to try and pacify the powerful being as Clark slowly walked towards the table the green-haired man sat at. Woohoo! The clown giggled as Kal-El casually tossed the table to the side, reaching down and grabbing the villain by the collar before slamming his back into the glass. You drugged me. Made me. Superman began with a growl before dropping his head in grief. Lois, my son. First Krypton, now Metropolis. Joker said uncharacteristically seriously before laughing out. People you love tend to blow up, don't they? The fuck you say? Katsuki roared, outraged by the green-haired man's audacity as everyone looked on in shock. That is so not manly, Kirishima exclaimed, unconsciously hardening his body in anger. First he blows up a city, now he mocks him? Tinya growled through clenched teeth, lowering his head as he glared at the screen. How can anyone be this twisted? Krypton, the principal mumbled to himself. What was that, sir? The former #1 hero asked, desperate for a distraction. Joker mentioned a place, Krypton, but I have never heard of it. Nizu explained, not bothering to look at the hero. However, from what he said we can infer that it too had been blown up. Wait, you don't think he was? Present Mike stuttered, his sunglasses slipping down his nose as he stared at the screen. He was possibly trying to trigger any lingering PTSD as well as worsen his self-blaming by drawing similarities between the two incidents. Shota continued, his voice icy and dripping with venom, likely trying to target any survivor's guilt Superman may have. That is just pure evil. Midnight sighed, clenching her teeth as she tried to process that this was an alternate version of her sweet, cinnamon roll of a student. Superman don't, Batman yelled as Clark reeled his fist back, causing the powerful man to readjust his fist at the last second, shattering the glass with a grunt. Heh, that's why I like you're much more gullible then. Joker chuckled as he laid a hand on Kal-El's shoulder, nodding towards the dark hero as he finished. Rah! Superman roared, throwing the clown across the room, his body slamming into the wall before falling onto the table, breaking it. Yes, Kakin exclaimed, sparks flying from his hands. Fuck him up. I can't believe I'm agree with Bakugo about watching Midoriya get beat up. Kaminari chuckled, earning glares from his female classmates. What? I like Midoriya as much as the next guy, but you guys can't tell me this version doesn't deserve this. That's enough. Their homeroom teacher stepped in, cutting off the argument as the girls bit their lower lip, unable to disagree with Kaminari, but not liking watching the green-haired hero get hurt. You think you can have a family? That locking me up will magically reform me, and that they'll be safe. Joker taunted as he stood up, stretching his back as he walked towards his chair before picking it up and sitting down so big, so dumb. Clark didn't say anything, merely glaring at the Joker as he moved, slowly walking in front of the seated clown. Now run along so that I can break out of here. The green-haired man shooed Superman away with a laugh. I have lots of planning to do to top this. Top this. Mandalay gasped as the room shook with shock, fear, and outrage. He just nuked a fucking city. Bakugo yelled, his eyes burning with fury. What more could he possibly do? Mineta gasped, staring at the screen in disbelief. Uraraka gnawed on her lip as the clown mocked the exact thing she had been hoping for. He's trying to provoke him. Aizawa sighed, narrowing his eyes at the screen. He truly is insane. Nizu sighed, vaguely wondering what had caused this Midoriya to become like this. That's enough, Batman declared as Superman lunged forward, grabbing the Joker by the throat and lifting him into the air. Not bothering to turn to his fellow hero, Clark casually swatted him aside, sending the Bat-themed man flying back and causing his head to hit a piece of rubble. I know it's soon, but think you'll ever love again? Joker wheezed out with a chuckle, choking against the steel grip around his throat. Maybe you won't kill your next family. Did he just? Snipe attempted to ask as the room went deafeningly silent, everyone only able to hear the sound of their hearts beating in their chest. How could? Bakugo gasped, his anger vanishing in a second and being replaced with disbelief. The blonde has said and done things he regrets, acted in ways he regrets, but he could never imagine even think of something close to that. No one could believe their ears. This was beyond insanity. This was pure evil. Shino and Toga instinctively covered the children's eyes and ears once more, a piercing gut feeling telling them what was about to happen. Gah! Superman roared, his eyes once again glowing red as he glared at the Joker. The superpowered being thrusts his hand forward, piercing the clown's chest with a spray of blood. The green-haired man laughed as the air was forced out of his lungs from the blow, grinning madly at Batman as his spine burst out of his back. I win, the Joker declared with a laugh, his voice hoarse, mouth dripping with blood. The green-haired man's maniacal laughter filling the air, slowly fading away as the screen turned to static. He won? Mina managed to ask, her pink face pale and marred with horror. How? He died. That's precisely how he won. All Might sighed, running a hand through his hair as his students looked to him to explain a hero's job is to save lives. We need to capture villains and let the justice system take care of them. We don't have the right to decide who lives and who dies, and by pushing Superman into killing him, he made him pass a line in which there is no going back. He wasn't responsible for the death of his family nor the destruction of that city, but by killing the Joker, he became judge, jury, and executioner. That's oddly profound of you, Shota said through his scarf, raising an eyebrow at the former hero. But any jury would have. Ojiro tried to speak up, tried to justify, only to be cut off by the principal. But no jury did. Nizu explained, shaking his head. While it's entirely possible he would have been given the death penalty, he was never given a trial. Instead, Superman killed him personally, and while no one can fault him for doing so, once you have crossed that line once it becomes easier to do so again, to push that line further and further back each time. That was the Joker's goal, to corrupt Superman, to push him beyond his morals and make him abandon his own ideals. How could? Ochako whispered, drawing nearby students' attention. How could any human be so heartless? He called himself the Joker. Todoroki sighed, his emotionless tone seeming to drip with frozen rage as he closed his eyes, but I think calling him human is a bigger joke. Truly a mad banquet of darkness. Tokoyami mumbled out, feeling dark shadow wrap itself around him like a blanket. No one said anything for what felt like hours, everyone trying to process the monster that was the Joker. I think it's best if we try to move on and forget about that world. Aizawa eventually sighed, turning to the student, taking in how defeated they all looked. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves while I discuss with the rest of the teachers. Yes, sir. The class sighed, grouping up and trying to hold up half-hearted conversations. So, what is it you wanted to discuss? Tashinori asked as the adults grouped together, keeping a close eye on the students, Mirio ushering Eri and Koda to play away from everyone else. Ain't it obvious? Snipe questioned with his southern drawl. We gotta decide if we are going to keep watching these or just wait around for the watcher to come back. If we keep watching, we run the risk of causing more mental turmoil to the kids. Midnight stated, lowering her head sadly. But if we keep watching, we can make it easier to take our minds off that world. Cementos replied, his voice gruff. It may be more beneficial to watch more and try to put that world behind us. But what if we see another world like this one? Ectoplasm asked, his distorted voice showing clear worry. Yagi listened to his colleagues, tuning their conversation out as he turned to the students. The former pro let a smile grace his lips as the minutes ticked by. The young heroes slowly began to calm down, returning to tense, yet normal conversations. Man, no matter what we decide, Hound Dog is going to have his work cut out for him when we get back. Hisashi sighed, leaning back in his chair just in time to see a flicker of color above the group. Huh? What the dash? What's up? Namiri asked as she saw the blonde's face shift to confusion. I just saw something, Present Mike declared, pointing towards the air above them, drawing everyone's attention. I knew I saw something. I even told you I saw something, Minoru exclaimed, leaping from his seat. I knew I wasn't crazy. I wouldn't go that far. Zero chuckled with a frown, still unable to bring himself to smile. I still don't see anything. Kaminari began only to cut himself off as everyone witnessed a mass of colors flicker, once more lasting a second before disappearing. What the fuck was that? Bakugo yelled, staring wide-eyed at the air as the flickering happened again, last longer and becoming more frequent. Everybody move, Aizawa ordered as the phenomenon happened again, lasting even longer, shapes becoming more defined. What's happening? Mineta screeched as everybody grabbed their chairs and moved to the side. What is that? Ashido asked as they saw a mass steadily fade into existence, gray mixed with splotches of colors. A cacophony of new voices screamed as the mass finally took shape, falling to the ground below. Is everyone all right? An adult, male voice asked as the swarm slowly began to move. Yaoyorozu recognized a head of hair among the new group and gasped in shock. Kendo?